Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. I'm your host, gaming psychologist, and with me as always, my plucky, velvety smooth sidekick.
Effing rage. I didn't know you were going to do that.
Well, I always like to mix it up on you and introduce you as a different type of thing every week. On this week's show, we've got a lot of current news topics and then some discussions beyond that. In fact, there's too many to list. If you really want to know, look in the description below either this video or the cover image on your podcast app. How you doing this week, Rage?
Doing all right. It's been actually a little bit of a busy week for me because I fell behind on my YouTube recording schedule. I wouldn't say I'm a big YouTuber. It's just I'm a busy one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm super behind because I was on vacation and then I got sick. But I'm finally mostly better. Like, I was doing okay last week. I just sounded rough, but over the weekend, I just needed some more time to recover.
Yeah, I think you're just allergic to Saturdays, and I think we're going to have to try to cure this. My idea is we're going to sit down and we're going to watch some low-grade Saturday morning cartoons until you're used to Saturdays. None of the good stuff. None of the good stuff right away because your immune system is too weak. You can't handle the good stuff.
Apparently not. I also can't apparently install SWAT 4 on my computer, but that's another story for another time. Maybe if we get to games piracy and preservation, I'll talk about that this week. But
teasing topics that we're probably not going to get to.
Probably not. That one I think is either last or next to last on the list.
It's actually not quite last.
It's
the first general topic.
Yeah. Well, I could just rearrange that, put it in the back.
Or I could just skip ahead and completely ignore the order once again.
Yeah, you do that. But, so, you said you had a busy week. What games have you played this week?
Honestly, I haven't been able to play a lot because, YouTube takes an extraordinary amount of time to be able to generate videos. It's actually a lot longer than what most people think it takes to make a video. And I put out, now 7 a week because of the podcast as well.
Right, but let's be honest. For you just put a static image over the audio and just use that as your background for your YouTube video.
Yeah, the podcast VOD, quote unquote, is perhaps my laziest thing. To be fair, I also put annotations on it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't do annotations. I just slap everything in the description and make it look a little bit prettier. But I put mine over an actual video, so it is a VOD. Although
maybe I should animate the whole picture hanging on a caddy cord or askew.
Animate that picture.
Just to annoy you even more.
Have it like sway back and forth, but never quite get level.
Exactly.
That probably would take a lot of work, though.
Yeah, that would be one of my boredom times where I just start working on an art project. But I did play a new game. I actually started a new game on my channel.
Okay.
A new series, so I can talk about that a little bit. I've gotten 1 episode out already, and by the time this releases, the episode 2 will be out. It's a game from, I think, 2013 or 14, and it's probably the most Ubisoft game I've ever played. It's called Grow Home.
Yeah, I think that I own Grow Home, but
I've
never played it.
When I was looking at the store page, I saw you were literally, I think, one of 2 people that owned it out of my friends list.
Let's see, Grow Home. Yeah, Idolmaster has played it for 3 hours, but I've never played it.
Yeah, Grow Home, like I said, it's the most Ubisoft game probably that they've ever made. It bills itself as a vertical platformer, but in truth, you are literally climbing this giant plant because reasons. And it's kind
reasons.
Pretty much. I mean, they give you a reason to do it, to be able to save Earth somehow. Don't ask me why or how. I have absolutely no clue, and I even paid attention during the opening cutscene.
Do you jump down into a pile of hay?
No.
That would make it the most Ubisoft game ever.
No, but you do climb this giant, basically beanstalk. And it has sort of the Assassin's Creed style of being able to climb up any surface. But the thing that really sets it apart from Assassin's Creed that makes it a little bit more interesting to me is instead of just, holding whatever button it is to climb up the wall, you're actually altering the trigger or the bumper buttons depending on your configuration. I'm using a gamepad for this because trying to use digital controls on this game just isn't going to work because they have this procedural animation style for the robot named Bud, B-U-D, Botanical Utility Droid, if I recall correctly. Which they really missed the boat on that. They should have called this guy Jack. I mean, let's be honest.
Jack and the Beanstalk. Although, what kind of acronym would they come up for him if his name was Jack?
I don't know. I'm not the writer.
Fair play, I suppose.
Besides, they could just make up words. I mean, it is a sci-fi game, technically.
I mean, it looks really cute. I can't remember how much I paid for it. It wasn't very much.
Yeah, I got it pretty cheap as well. Actually, if I recall correctly, I got it through a Newegg gift card that they sent me for some reason. I think it's some sort of loyalty thing because I bought most of my computer components there.
Yeah. I could play it this week, and then it could be like Game Club, almost. Then we could actually talk about the same game for once. Or, not the same game, a game that we both played at the same time for once.
Well, I'll still be playing it, so if you want to jump into it. I will go a little bit more into it, though. I mentioned the climbing on it. The difference between this and Assassin's Creed, instead of holding a button and climbing up a surface like Spider-Man, essentially, is that you're alternating the buttons and literally grabbing onto this low-poly beanstalk or rock face or whatever surface you're on. And it makes it a bit more engaging, at least to me.
Sell me on this game. What do you do other than just climb stuff? Like, I bought it because I thought the art style was really cute.
The goal of the game is to get the beanstalk or whatever they called it. I can't remember. I just ended up eventually just calling it the beanstalk. 2 kilometers to get to your ship.
Okay.
And as you climb, I'm not sure if you're able to see it in the screenshots on the store page. You'll definitely be able to see it in my YouTube video, which, like I said, the second episode won't be out by now. Remember, youtube.com, caffeine gaming with rage.
There you go, shameless plugging.
Along the beanstalk are these little red flowers that you're able to climb onto, and basically it causes them to extend out, and the beanstalk grows by latching onto these floating glowing crystals and basically getting life energy from them to make the beanstalk grow. It's basically a platformer. Even though it's not really a lot of jumping, there is some jumping elements. You're able to jump between the leaves of the beanstalk. They act like jump pads almost.
Yeah, I can see, I'm looking at the screenshots on Steam. I can see some of the things that you're talking about.
And also scattered across the game level, it's literally just a single level, but as you climb up, you're accessing different areas of the game world. There's 100 energy crystals that you also have to collect, which you're given one, and then the rest of them you have to find, and it unlocks different powers. Like you get a jetpack pretty early on, and then upgrade a jetpack, and you're also able to grab flowers to act like basically a parachute. But the parachute deteriorates over like probably about 10 to 15 seconds. It's an interesting platformer.
It looks cute. I mean, I'm not normally into platformers or anything like that, but the art style really sold me on that game. And I'm like, well, it looks cute. As long as it plays halfway decent, it'll be a good game.
I will say that the robot, this definitely requires a controller. There is no way about it because the way the bot is animated, it uses the procedural animation style. The biggest game that I can think of to draw a parallel between this is like Grand Theft Auto 4. And until you get used to the controls and learn to be a little bit more gentle with the bot, it controls like Nico's been out for a night on the town after Cousin Roman's called him. I mean, literally the first episode of my Let's Play was him stumbling around for like 15 minutes until I got used to it.
Sounds interesting. Well, I maybe I should practice with my beer goggles. Just wear those around for a while. All right, I'm good. I can control the little robot.
It would probably be an interesting game for someone to play while drunk.
You mean an impossible game to play while drunk? Maybe I'll get a little tipsy and try playing the game.
That would be good YouTube.
So is that the only thing you played this week?
That's been pretty much the only thing I played. I've played a little bit of Isaac, which was pretty much just what I recorded, and a couple daily runs, and a little bit of Warframe, and that's been about it. Like I said, a busy week. It takes me a long time to get those videos out. Right.
Well, since you mostly played one game, I don't feel so bad saying that pretty much the only game I played this week was Eve.
Which surprised no one.
Nope. I did play one other game, though. I'll talk briefly about it first. I got a new mobile game called... let me pull it up here. I can't remember the name. It is called Opus. It's a little... kind of a solar system exploration game. You play this little robot. It's way, way, way in the future. And humanity has moved on from Earth. But it's been lost due to like some tragedy, and so you're trying to find the mother planet because you think that perhaps the roots of humanity are there, and you can go and find a cure to like the genetic disease that's affecting the population. And so you're a robot who's managing this station that is trying to find Earth. And it's got the entire night sky has been copied and put into the game. And you can just go explore and look at different stars, and there's scientific information about the stars, and there's a cute little story about how that there's something that happens, and you're trying to solve the mystery of what happened to your friends and the crew on your ship. And it's just a really cute, fun, but educational game, and I'm not sure how long it is. I played it for maybe an hour in total this past week.
Have you hit the paywall yet?
Actually, it was a game that you paid for.
Okay.
I paid $2.99 for it, and it's a really cute, fun game. I've definitely enjoyed it so far, and I'm gonna finish it. But the nature of the game is really good to be played in really short bursts, because you can just go for like 5 minutes and look at some different stars and catalog them. And
so it's a toilet game.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I have played it on the toilet a couple of times, but
called it.
It's not your typical sort of game like that. Like normally you play Candy Crush or Clash of Clans on the toilet, and in this game I'm like reading about stars and our galaxy while I'm on the toilet. So
well, I know a certain someone that wouldn't want to hear about a certain star.
We shall not mention his name.
Or her.
But so it's cute, and I'm going to finish it at some point in the near future, and then I'll actually report back on the whole game and what happens. But what I've played of it so far is fun. And then there was the big amount of time I played Eve this week.
Okay, I'm just going to go take a break now. Let me know when you're done.
Well, have you ever seen the This Is Eve trailer? I believe it came out last year. It might have been actually in 2014. I think
so. That was the one with the dickish guy that stole everything?
No, I think that's the trailer that made fun of the This Is Eve trailer. This one was put out by CCP, and it's a collection of in-game footage that people have captured, for YouTube or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's basically all of the most exciting and interesting things that can happen in Eve, all crammed into like a 3-minute trailer to like show off the best parts of the game. And I probably try to convince people to subscribe to it, like in the hopes of chasing that. Well, I actually had some.
Yes, go through 100 hours of boredom for 5 minutes of excitement.
I actually had some of those moments this week. So last time I told you that our corporation went to war, like some random people just declared war on us, and we spent the last week fighting them. And we were very horribly outmatched. I mean, we're a whole bunch of industrial characters, and this guy was like, he had ridiculously high-level equipment and big pew-pew bang-bang stuff. But over the weekend, we all got together, and we were like, we've got to put a stop to this. We've got to kill him. So a whole bunch of us in the corporation got together. We formed a fleet, We spent like 45 minutes or an hour like tracking this guy through space, and then we attacked him and we like locked him in place. Like we, it's kind of like a tractor beam. That's not what it's called in game, but basically it works like a tractor beam, and you can hold ships in place so they can't warp out. And we had like a 20-minute battle with this guy, and finally we killed him. And because all of his stuff was so expensive, we cost him so much money with one ship destruction that he was like, nope, I'm surrendering. You guys can all work together as a team. I can't beat you.
So it was just one guy against your corp?
It was one guy against like 25 of us. But like he had been a player for several years, and he had like $1 billion worth of equipment. He had $1 billion worth of equipment. We got together in a bunch of like he had a battleship, or maybe it was a dreadnought, I'm not sure. It was huge, and he could kill a lot of us in like one hit if he could actually lock onto us and kill us. And then we had like a whole bunch of like frigates and destroyers and like small stuff, but we just ganged up on him and murderized him, and it was glorious. Like it was one of those moments. I was like, yes, this is like one of the exciting reasons why I play this game. Just like everybody working together. So I'm really glad I joined a corp. It was a lot of fun. And also my bank balance in EVE is now over $100 million. I was really excited about that. That happened today.
And that does make me kind of nostalgic for my WoW days of playing with the guild together, but honestly, I don't have the time for that anymore with the YouTube stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it was a really fun moment, and it was, a good time playing the game, but all in and done, it was like an hour and a half of gameplay of us all working together to take this guy down. And that's great, but, leading up to that, there have been like 100 hours of just sitting in a station like, where can I sell this to make the most money? So you've got to be into both of those things in order to enjoy the game, but just, it's nice to have those moments of excitement too. I probably sound like the most boring person in the whole world as I say that. Yeah, whatever. So that's the games that I played this week. That's it. So, are you ready to move into our first topic?
Yes, I am.
All right, first on the topic list this week is Hitman switches to episodic releases. So I had heard rumors about this, or maybe it was speculation and not rumors about this, a couple of months ago. I forget which podcast I heard it on. I want to say that it was The Patch, which is the podcast that Rooster Teeth does. It's about video games. They kind of had it on their rumor mill, and they discussed it a couple of months ago. Honestly, I didn't expect it to be a real thing. I mean, Hitman has always been a really big story-based game, and there's quite a bit of lore in that world.
Yeah, I honestly hadn't heard anything about this coming up, so it came completely out of left field whenever... Well, the first real hint of this happening was pre-orders pretty much everywhere were being canceled, and the email from, I think it was Sony actually, was talking about how the configuration of the product had changed significantly.
Right.
So that was the real hint of something big going on, and then a day or two later we heard about Hitman switching to episodic release.
How do you feel about the Hitman series in general? Like, are you a fan of the games? Or...
I'm not a huge fan of the game. I didn't really play the old ones, and I played a little bit. I mean, just a little bit of Absolution. And it's an interesting game. I think I enjoyed Absolution a bit when I played. I always intended to actually put it on the YouTube channel. So that's probably one reason why I didn't go too far into it. Just trying to get a feel for the game itself.
I've not played...
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I've not played every Hitman game, but I have played quite a few of them. I find them very enjoyable. I like all of the options that they give you. I'm sure it wasn't the first game, but it's one of the first games that I remember playing that gave you multiple paths in which you could complete your objective. I mean, you can be really stealthy and, knock people out, steal their clothes, and sneak around, or you can just run in guns blazing, and you get graded based on how well you do. And I always find that really enjoyable when a game gives me options. So I've played quite a few games over the years.
Yeah, Hitman Absolution, I think they changed it a bit where they gave it a score system and they heavily favored the stealth method.
Yeah. I found that to be kind of annoying because I don't always like to do things stealthy, or, I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty bad at stealth, so I'm not always able to complete the objective stealthily anyways, but I mean, it still is a solid game. The mechanics are real solid, so I think that, honestly, I think all this is money. They're going, how can we make more money off the Hitman series? Oh, I know, let's sell it out piecemeal to our fans. They'll pay for it.
Yeah, this is an interesting model. I'm not sure if it's a good one or not, but I'll go into this reading from the article, which will be linked below or in the notes or wherever.
Absolutely.
The prologue Paris mission is the intro pack. It launches on March 11th, which is just under 2 months from when we're recording this. And they did this huge change literally last moment development-wise because they have to go through QA and certification and everything. So that's part of the reason why I'm a little bit skeptical on this. But we'll get into that in a bit. And it's going to be $15 for the intro pack. Then subsequent missions will release at $10 a piece. And players will have the option of buying everything on advance for $60, the usual price, or waiting until fall of 2016 to get everything on one disc. Everything else is released digitally.
Right. Personally, the way I feel about this was such a sudden change, like just from out of nowhere, you know. I think that there's a problem with the game. I don't know if it's like they ran out of money or something, and so they didn't finish the story, and they're going to sell it to us a piece at a time and kind of fund the next piece with the one that they've sold. In which case, if that's the case, that's really dangerous because if enough people get
you end
mad,
up with space,
right, and not actually be able to finish the game because not enough people buy it. Or that someone in like marketing or I don't know, maybe not accounting, but someone was sitting around a corporate boardroom and going, those Telltale guys sure make a lot of money off those episodic games. What if we do that? And then they shoehorned it in at the last minute.
Well, here's the thing, is that this isn't their first episodic release that they've announced in the last, let's say, month or so. Do you remember their other one?
Oh, I think it had like the word final in it.
Yes.
Maybe Fantasy 7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Final Fantasy 7. They also announced that it's going to be pieced out. Now, that one actually has a more natural breaking point with the different discs.
Right.
But Hitman, it more flows from mission to mission. And they actually gave a full list of the assassination areas. So that's kind of really spoiling things. And they did say that it's going to be monthly, the releases.
Even though I think Final Fantasy VII has a better excuse for it, I still think that in 2016 that's a garbage reason to do so. This is, I mean, like I said, very clearly either some kind of money grab or there's something wrong with the game. Like, there's no reason to break up a Hitman game like that. Like, part of the whole flow of the Hitman games is you go from mission to mission. There's always a larger story arc depending on which, Hitman game you're playing at the time. But
the fact that they're talking about being able to skip missions by just not buying them and continuing on with the rest, that makes me question if there's going to be an overarching story.
Right, which, I mean, really goes against what the Hitman games stand for. I kind of get the idea of making little self-contained stories within the missions themselves, and honestly, the Hitman games have always done that. If you, sneak around and find everything, you can find out the story behind your target, or, your targets, depending on what kind of mission it is. But they still all play into this overall theme. And I don't know how they can make that work episodically. Or at the very least, if it does work when you play them all together, it will be very disjointed when you play them month to month. Like having to wait in order to experience the next chunk of the story in a game like Hitman it's not built for it. And I don't feel like announcing it 2 months beforehand. I mean, that doesn't instill any confidence in me that they have tried to build this game around the episodic model.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay, predict away.
A new story that we're going to hear in 2017, probably about halfway through the year.
Okay.
Now, please excuse me. I don't have a towel wrapped around my head for a turban, and my bowling ball's packed away somewhere, so I don't have my crystal ball either.
Okay.
But I'm going to predict that Square Enix is going to announce disappointing sales for Hitman, for Final Fantasy VII, and I'm going to throw Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider out there as well. I think we're going to hear disappointing sales on all three of these games for various reasons. For Tomb Raider, I should go into that they're absolutely screwing over the PlayStation by having it released almost a year after the Xbox. And let's be honest, dividing their sales between essentially 3 different periods, or 2 periods, depending on how you want to separate the PC release, which only releases about a month or a month and a half after the Xbox one. I think they're splitting their sales too much, and they're going to make a lot of PS4 owners angry, and they're just not going to buy it.
Yeah. Speaking of Rise of the Tomb Raider, it releases on PC next week.
Okay,
Sadly,
I wasn't 100% sure on the release date, and honestly, after hearing them screw over both PC players and console or PlayStation players, PlayStation players to a greater extent, of course. It's just kind of like, all right, I'll get it eventually, baby.
Yeah, sales on the Xbox One version of Rise of the Tomb Raider were, what were the words that they used? Anemic? Or...
disappointing?
No, I don't think they said disappointing. They might have said like lower than expected or less than anticipated, something like that.
Isn't the Xbox the weakest console out there?
The Xbox is, well, the Wii U
sales-wise, I should say?
No, that's still the Wii U. The Wii U is still the weakest.
The Wii U's in this weird position where it's like it's the third wheel, and whenever you talk console, 9 times out of 10, you're talking PlayStation or Xbox.
True. Between the PlayStation and the Xbox has got less sales, and it's a weaker console. It's not that much weaker, but it is weaker.
And I should also throw out why I think Final Fantasy is going to have the disappointing sales. Partly due to them going an episodic release, which who knows how long that will take.
Right.
And that's even assuming that they're going to be following the natural breaks in the story with the 4 discs. And also the fact that they're changing it. It's not the remaster that everyone was wanting. They're changing the combat to... wasn't it a real-time combat instead of the turn-based?
Yeah, it's now real-time instead of turn-based.
And they're also talking about changing some elements of the story, particularly the brothel that Cloud sneaks into in the first disc. Yeah. Because it's too problematic.
Yeah, it's too
these
racy.
Days. I mean...
Which is interesting because transgender people and people who go in drag... Like, gender identity is a lot more... an issue that's a lot more on the forefront in the world today compared to when it was in the 90s. And it's a lot more accepted. It's interesting that they think that that's too racy for current times.
I will go on the record to say that I think they're trying to appease people with changing that. They're trying to appease people that will never buy those games.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, I have to say, since we're talking about Final Fantasy VII, we're going to go on this little rabbit trail for a second. I'm actually looking forward to all the changes in the remaster. The way I see it is, if you want to go play the old Final Fantasy VII, go play the old Final Fantasy VII. There's several different versions of it, and there's already been one remastered version that up-resed all the textures and things like that. I mean, it still looks like you remember, from the late 90s, but it actually looks...
In other words, like ass?
Yes, but it does function properly on, modern 16:9 resolutions and at 60 frames a second. So, if you want your remastered Final Fantasy VII, you can go buy that. I'm actually liking the idea of some of these reimaginings. I mean, I like what they're doing with Final Fantasy 15. I like the way that game looks. And if Final Fantasy 7 remake, remaster, whatever, plays and looks a lot like that, I think I'm okay with that. I mean, I've had my Final Fantasy experience. I've played through Final Fantasy VII 3 times in my life. At least twice all the way through. I can't remember if I ever finished it the third time or not. You know, I'm looking forward to a reimagining of that story. I mean, everyone who listens can crucify me now if they want to.
You do bring up a good point, but at the same time is that they're selling the game on the name Final Fantasy VII, so you're going into it with a certain expectation.
That's very true.
You're wanting certain plot points to hit. And one of the big humor points in the... I'm going back to the Honeybee Brothel or whatever they called it. I was pretty sure it was Honeybee something. One of the big humor points of the first disc, which gets very, very dark, is that section. So taking it out really kind of throws off the whole feel of that section of the story. And it does make me wonder what else they plan on changing to be politically correct.
Right. It's called Honeybee Manor. I quickly Googled it while you were speaking.
I knew it was Honeybee something.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that I think that they need to keep most of the key plot points intact in order for it to still be called Final Fantasy VII. I'm okay with them maybe changing up some of the details a little bit to fit better with the new look and feel of the game, but I still think that the things need to be there. So I agree with you. I think that they have to be careful about how many changes they make and what those changes are.
So getting back to Hitman,
I mean,
finally, after
I think,
10 minutes?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, unless you have anything else you want to say about Hitman, I feel like we kind of finished and moved on to the other things that were related to it. I mean, if you have any final thoughts.
Got a little off topic once again.
Well, we do that.
But it was related, at least.
Yeah.
I should go on record in saying that it is brave of them to try a new method, to try to change things up. I'm just not convinced, especially with the timing, that this is for the good of the gamers.
Yeah. Or even just the good of the game. You know, I mean, sometimes decisions have to be made that people might not like, but benefit the game. So in the end, it's a net positive. I don't think that this is for the benefit of the game or the gamers. But only time will tell.
Which has been kind of a running theme as of late.
Yeah. Only time will tell, though. We'll see. In a couple of months, I'm sure we'll come back and talk about this some more.
Yeah, I'm sure Hitman will be something we return to. If only to make fun of it.
Just like we make fun of Evolve, which is in our next topic of discussion. Why aren't multiplayer-only shooters catching on? This was a really interesting article that you found and gave us this week that looks at 3 fairly recent multiplayer-only games and discusses kind of some of the psychological mechanics of game design and what make games, particularly games like this, compelling. And it discussed how 3 recent games, which were Titanfall, Evolve, and the Battlefront re-release, or Battlefront EA, don't meet those expectations in different ways. And I mean, I found it fascinating. I love stuff like this as a therapist.
Yeah, I knew you would just eat this article up.
So, first of all, obviously it'll be linked below. There's a lot of information here. The article's not super long, but there is a lot of information to chew through. What they're talking about is that these games don't meet a state of flow for different reasons. And for anyone out there who's listening who doesn't know what that is, flow is kind of like Zen. It's a state that not all games have to hit, but certain types of games have to hit, like quick puzzle games or shooters, where that essentially you're in the zone. The amount of action is enough to keep you really involved in the game, but it's not so unmanageable that you start to kind of get anxious or even feel like you're out of control or can't keep up.
It's essentially a mixture or a combining of the degree of challenge and your skill level and your confidence levels.
Right, and where they all perfectly meet is called flow. And if one of them is off too much in either direction, either you're too skilled or you're not skilled enough, for example, then you won't be in that state of flow. Following that example, either the game will be too hard or too easy, and then you won't find it enjoyable. And they were making the case that multiplayer-only shooters, the recent ones, don't meet those states because of the different ways that they've tried to tackle the challenge of meeting that state. Which is interesting. Titanfall, for example, the first one that they mention, to really summarize everything that he said, basically has too much action in it all the time. Between the NPC characters that you constantly can kill and are constantly coming to fight you, and how fast-paced the entire game is, it has too much going on all the time. And
there's no break time.
Right, there's no break time. So players tend to feel anxious, and he's got a scale, and it goes from anxiety to panic, and players can reach up into that panic zone if their skill level's not high enough.
And I will say that Titanfall, outside of the reasons that they gave here, confining it to Origin only definitely didn't help things. At least for PC release.
No, it did not. I tend to agree with that. I played Titanfall pretty extensively when it released on Xbox. They had a really big open beta weekend. And I probably played it for 4 or 5 days. And I definitely felt like there was always too much going on in that game. There was never any downtime. Even if you wanted to kind of hide in the corner and catch your breath and figure out what was going on, the NPCs, depending on what side you were on, their different names, they would come around the corner and it's like, oh, I've got to kill these guys because even though they're NPCs and they kind of suck, if I just sit here, they'll still kill me.
It's like going to a concert and just having so much noise that it kind of messes up the music.
Right. Evolve had the opposite problem. Again, to really summarize a lot of information. Playing that game in a pickup group is very difficult because people don't communicate, so there's nothing going on that way. And then at the same time, it has the asymmetric multiplayer with one person as the monster and 4 people as the hunters. And the monster is doing all right, but the people who are the hunters are basically chasing around the monster for 2/3 or 3/4 of the game, which can be as long as 20, 30 minutes, sometimes longer, of nothing happening.
Yeah, I played a little bit of Evolve during the alpha stage of it, and I pretty much realized that this wasn't a game for me. Just the monster was really what made or broke the game. If the monster was of decent level, it would be an okay match if it matched the skill level of the hunters. But the second the monster was really good, you just never saw it.
Right.
And you were just stuck there for however long the match went on until it eventually won. There was no catch-up mechanic, I think it was the problem.
Right. And there was no way to force early encounters. I mean, like you said, if a monster was good enough, he wouldn't see the players until he was ready to fight them. And forced early encounters were really exciting in that game because, the hunters stand much more than an equal chance against the early on monster. The monster's still powerful enough to kill a hunter, but the hunters can really pin down and kill a monster at level 1 or even level 2. Not that a monster can't be killed at level 3, but, the monster
It really depends on how much damage the monster has taken.
Right. And the monster is much more powerful than the players at level 3. I'm kind of blowing through this, then we can come back and talk about it in a minute. The third game was Battlefront. Summarizing up Battlefront, it had a really good mix of, amount of player interaction, but it suffered from a skill problem. The game is just too random. There's not enough skill that can be put into the game, and on top of that, higher level players are always better than lower level players. The gear they get is markedly better, as well as having access to various power-ups and skills and abilities that lower level players don't have access to. So,
well, there was complaints for the pre-order bonus. That was one of the more powerful guns that if you pre-ordered, you were given this gun at level 1 and was just able to slaughter everyone.
Yeah, it was the most powerful gun in the game. You got it at level 1 if you got a pre-order bonus. So for a couple weeks until players started catching up, if you pre-ordered the game, you had a marked advantage against the other players. So these are 3 very different games with 3 very different reasons why they don't work. I'm not quite sure where to go with this. It's just fascinating to me that 3 different, very different approaches to gameplay can all be so wrong.
And also, there's something else that is very interesting about this that I don't think you've caught.
What did I miss?
All 3 of these games had beta releases or alpha releases that did absolutely nothing to change the game design.
Right. You're right. And these problems were apparent in the alphas and betas. I know I complained not complained, but I gave feedback during the Titanfall beta and said, hey, tone down the NPCs. They're great as a catch-up mechanic for players who are less skilled, but, there's too many. Tone it down.
And I put feedback into Evolve. The thing is that these games are the alphas and betas that we play. They're not alphas and betas. They are marketing blurbs. They are a demo, essentially.
Yeah. At best, they're server tests.
Yeah, especially, what was it, Battlefront that had a beta weekend like 2 or 3 weeks before it launched?
Yeah, that was what Titanfall's was as well. Their beta was 3 weeks before the game launched.
Yeah, there is no time to do a design change for Titanfall or Battlefront.
No.
Because their beta is literally just a server test.
Right. And at that point, the games have already had to be sent to disc manufacturers. 3 weeks out, those games aren't getting any more changes before release. They might get a couple of bug fixes that could go in as like a day 1 patch or something, but the games have been sent off. They can't make any more major changes to them.
Yeah, I know Evolve was at least further out, but even then, that alpha was only a few months before the release, if I recall correctly.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I didn't participate in the alpha.
I'll have to look it up in a little bit, but all 3 of these games, they tried to make use of the marketing tactic of pre-order now, get into beta, try the open beta, try the closed beta. And all 3 of these games have design flaws that should have been fixed in these betas that weren't. As a matter of fact, usually a lot of these open betas don't even have a way to give feedback. Right. Rainbow Six Siege, its beta was literally just a couple days before launch. And there was no way to give feedback to that. There was no time to give feedback to that. It is an essential problem with game design and no time to fix it. The idea of these open betas needs to change.
I agree. I do have a question for you, though. And let's try, if we have to use them, fine. But let's try and not say Team Fortress 2 or Counter-Strike. What are some multiplayer-only games that have done well and continue to succeed?
Ugh. Well, on PC, that's a lot harder just because there's just so many options.
Right. If we need to make a quick cut to think about it, we can do that. But I think
I'm heading immediately to the Steam list because that's usually the best way to do this.
Well, I've got one for consoles that really nobody talks about, but actually is very, very successful as a multiplayer-only shooter. Do you want to take a guess at what it is?
Multiplayer shooter on consoles.
That actually is successful, not just because it's on a console.
I'm not sure.
Splatoon.
Splatoon. Once again, forgetting about the Wii.
Yep, the forgotten console actually had probably the best, most successful multiplayer-only game. Well, I guess technically it's not multiplayer-only, but the single-player mode is basically just challenges, so multiplayer-focused game to come out in recent history. Splatoon, I think, tackles all of these problems very well. The team sizes are small enough that they're not oversaturated. The objective of the game is not to get the most kills. Kills help your team out, so if you're good at killing, you can help your team. But the objective is to actually cover the map in the most paint. So you win kind of like in a score system, like, oh, you scored more because you had more paint. And that mechanic allows players to have different skill sets and stay invested in the game without having to be, 360 no-scope elite headshot people.
MLG Pro.
Right. And as far as I know, the game still has a thriving multiplayer community, even after, how long has that game been out? Several months. I don't think it's been out a whole year yet, but it's been out for quite some time. And I think that, there's ways you can incorporate that without just making non-kill based games, but Splatoon is a very good example of a game that got all of this right, that is multiplayer focused.
Well, I'm looking at the Steam list because that's usually the best way to judge the games on PC at least, or at least the ones that are released on Steam, of course.
Right.
And looking at the list, you get things like Arma 3, which has the downtime but also the skill ceiling.
Right.
So I think that's a good mixture. I'm not sure if it's I haven't actually played that one.
I own Arma 3, and I keep telling myself this day I'm going to play it. And I always get scared, and I never do. Because
and then,
of how...
You hover over the play button, and it's like, not today.
Eventually I'll play it, but the game is just supposed to be so hyper-realistic. I just am so used to unrealistic shooters. Not that hyper-realism is a bad thing for a shooter, but it's kind of intimidating.
I'll throw Warframe out there. It's pretty high on the Steam playlist.
Yeah, but Warframe isn't...
Yeah, Warframe is a different beast. It's these are talking about competitive shooters mostly.
Yeah, and Warframe's got the PvP mode, but, and I'm sure people play it, but none of us do. Ever. Yeah. I've never touched the PvP, and I probably never will. That's not why I play that game.
H1Z1 is there.
H1Z1 doesn't count.
H1Z1 is just a bunch of Twitch and YouTube players screaming at one another at this point, I think.
And torturing each other.
I think you're going to have to do a psychological profile of the typical H1Z1 player at some point.
I can do that. That's on our list for me to do psych profiles of stuff.
We have to write that one down.
Yeah, we'll make a note of it, and I'll do that for a future episode.
And then you start getting into Valve stuff, Left 4 Dead 2, Dota 2, and TF2 is, of course, there as well. Not technically Valve stuff, but Gary's Mod is there, which... Even though it does have a single-player component, it's mostly multiplayer stuff with different game modes.
Right, but definitely with Gary's Mod, that's more of a creative tool. I know there's lots of multiplayer games in there, but I think most of that, the excitement for that game comes from the creativity.
Actually, I think you're wrong on that.
Really?
I don't think you realize just how many competitive game modes there are in Gary's Mod.
I guess
yes,
not.
There is the competitive side of it. But you get things like Trouble in Terrorist Town.
I'm familiar with Trouble in Terrorist Town. And what's the one where that people are objects and you have to play hide and seek?
Prop Hunt.
Yeah, Prop Hunt and Trouble with Terrorist Town are the only two things that I've ever heard of from Gary's Mod.
Well, let's see. There's Death
silly.
Run. There's I'm trying to think of. There's I'm trying to think of the name of the game mode, and I'm just completely blanking on it. But it's essentially. Humans versus aliens, and the aliens have different abilities that they could crawl along walls and hide and turn invisible, that sort of thing.
I don't have a lot of experience with Gary's Mod, so I'm totally open to admitting that I could be wrong. Just, I guess from my perspective, that's how I see Gary's Mod, but I could be wrong.
Here's an interesting beast on the multiplayer only competitive. Robocraft.
Robocraft? What am I thinking of then? Because I'm not thinking of a multiplayer competitive game. Let me look this up on Steam really quick. I know the name.
Robocraft is essentially a vehicular combat game mixed with essentially Minecraft
okay.
for the parts.
Okay. I was thinking of a different
Think
game.
of it basically space engineers, but you're actively trying to kill the enemy team.
Yeah, I was thinking of another game that's like that, but instead it's a PvE kind of exploration game. I can't think of the name of it right now, but that's okay. I know what Robocraft is.
Yeah, I think it definitely has the Zen moments in it where everything is just coming together, but at the same time, it's spaced off a lot further apart because you have that building cycle as well. So there's definitely Zen moments in the game. The top was this 100 list, and I think it really comes down to the game devs just abusing the term beta and not be able to fix their games with betas anymore.
Well, I think it comes down to, beyond that, a design philosophy. I mean, looking at the games that are on the list, their whole shtick is multiplayer shooty kill each other. And there's nothing
Basically
wrong
trying to be Call of Duty.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of game, but that formula has already been done to death very well by other games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. They kind of hit both angles of that.
And I'll even throw, even though it'll probably get me shot, Counter-Strike and Dirty Bomb into the mix. Counter-Strike a bit differently just because it has the economic model and a higher multiplier on headshots, that sort of thing. But
right,
it is the same basic idea. And please don't shoot me. Well, if you're going to shoot me, at least shoot me in the head and make it quick.
But all the other games that we mentioned, that's not their primary thing. I mean, yeah, there's definitely shooting and killing, but, Splatoon has got the whole cover the map with paint, and that's how you actually win. So, different game mechanics. Robocraft has got the kind of Minecraft-esque or Space Engineers-esque building model to it, so that you have
the creative mode where you have to kind of adjust your your vehicle in between rounds to try to alleviate its flaws.
Right. And so I think that's... I mean, these are big AAA games that are the ones that are failing, and the little indie games, or at least the smaller developer-based games, are the ones that are succeeding. And I think that's that mindset. Like, all the big AAA guys, they want to be Call of Duty or Battlefield, in space or in sci-fi or, in whatever.
And they're just throwing so much at this. And I hate using the term, but they're becoming tryhards.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to go down the same path that someone has already pioneered and just throw a new coat of paint on it. And it doesn't work that way. I mean, there's only
new coat of paint, they're messing up the formula.
Yeah, and there's only so much room, for competitors in this market. And I would say that the three big games that really have it held down are Call of Duty, Halo, and Battlefield. I mean, those are the games that have got that multiplayer style of, basically just shoot and kill each other.
Yeah, I will throw Counter-Strike into that.
Yeah. And Team Fortress 2, probably. I mean, I said we shouldn't count those because they were like the big ones that did succeed otherwise, but...
Well, we're talking about the big games that are able to hold that formula.
Right. And
Even though TF2 is... it changes its objective so much that I'm not sure if I want to count that. Because of the different game modes.
So, I mean, there might be a couple more that we're just not thinking of for some reason, but... I mean, that's a pretty saturated market. You've got 5 really big name games that are holding down that formula.
And then if you don't want to play those games, there's the smaller ones like Dirty Bomb. Blizzard has Overwatch coming out before too long. Or did they change the name of that? I can't remember if they did or not.
As far as I know, it's still called Overwatch.
I remember there was talk about it at one point. I can't remember if they changed it or not.
Let's do a quick Google search.
I'm probably just misremembering something else.
Looks like a news article from a couple of weeks ago says that Overwatch may have to undergo a name change, but I don't see anything saying that they actually have changed the name yet.
Okay, that's what I was probably remembering was a potential name change because of some copyright thing.
Yeah, something about trademarks. I don't know. I'm not going to read this article. But, yep. I think that pretty well covers the shooter topic.
Yeah, so let's move on to trademarks.
Absolutely. Sony, this past week, attempted to trademark the term Let's Play. Thankfully, they did not succeed, but the fact that they even tried is disgusting.
Well, this is also another case of the courts making the right decision for the wrong reason. Or did you read that part?
No, I did not read that part.
They didn't give them the trademark, not because of the term being, everywhere. I mean, we're both Let's Players. They didn't give them the trademark because another company already owns a similar copyright. Let's Play of America, a company out of Georgia that garners to gaming events. It's spelled Let'Z, Let's Play. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why they didn't get the copyright.
I mean,
I should say trademark. We should distinguish trademark and copyright here. Trademark is literally just brand naming.
Right.
But the thing is that Sony, if they got the trademark, in order to keep the trademark, they have to try to defend the trademark, which causes a lot of problems for a lot of YouTubers out there.
Yeah. I wonder how well they would do, actually. I mean, going against me or you, I mean, we would just be like, yeah, we can't, fight you legally. We'll just change the names of all of our videos. But, I mean, there's a lot of really big name channels, like lots of big money channels that do Let's Play. Like,
I would
the biggest
love
one
to
is
see
PewDiePie.
them fight Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, Rooster Teeth and PewDiePie.
No, the reason why I chose Rooster Teeth specifically, they own the channel Let's Play on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They do. So that would be... And I don't know if Rooster Teeth could battle them in court. I mean, Rooster Teeth's gotten to be a pretty big company, but compared to Sony, I don't know. That would be interesting.
Well, didn't YouTube, I should say Google, say that they would help YouTubers fight legal battles fairly recently?
Yeah, I believe they said they would provide up to $1 million in support of a YouTuber in a legal... in a court case for
now,
copyright.
Granted, against Sony, that's not going to make much of a difference, but...
The question is, though, would Google/YouTube stand up and say, well, we've got, 1 million Let's Players. That's just a random number I just pulled out of my hat. I don't know.
And that's probably a low number.
It probably is low, but, let's just say 1 million. It's like, we've got 1 million Let's Players on YouTube of various sizes. Would they step in and say, nope, we're going to fight this legal battle on their behalf because they were here first? Or would they say, oh, you guys deal with it?
Well, considering the history of Google and YouTube standing up for the... Oh, wait.
I mean, they are making changes. I would hope that they would, but I'm not confident that they would. But... I mean, Sony didn't get it. I'm sure somebody will try again at some point in the future. Hopefully they don't get it either, but I know why they did it. I mean, they want money. Or they want publicity.
The article, the Escapist article at least, didn't really give a reason, but it's once again just comes down to the root of all evil.
Right. And I mean, then there have been examples of companies getting away with this. King had the trademark on candy for a short time, which pretty much destroyed a portion of the iStore and almost got them in a legal battle with the makers of Candyland.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other... a certain pop singer tried to trademark 1989 at one point.
Really?
If I remember correctly, yeah.
Who was it? I've never heard of this before.
She who must not be named.
Oh, good old Swiftie. That was recent then. Her album 1989 came out, what, last year? Year before last? How did I completely miss, I guess,
I'm
that
double checking, make
icon?
Sure. See if she really did that or if that was just... Yeah, she wanted to trademark it.
Trademarking a year. That's fascinating. I mean, I don't really know how much there is to say about this. I'm glad they didn't win. It would have been a disaster if they did, but
Well, I do have a little aside to this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go off on another rabbit trail.
Go ahead.
This is another sign that Japanese companies just don't understand the fucking internet.
No, they don't.
I mean, I can think of 3 major video game companies out of Japan who have fucked up in the last year or two. And yes, I am getting a little angry now.
Let's see. There's Nintendo.
Well, there's Sony first, and yes, Nintendo with their whole tomfoolery of their Nintendo Network, which actually I haven't heard anything of since the big kerfuffle, which is probably what they wanted because they wanted to just go under the radar after a while, just everyone forgets it and they just accept it.
Right.
Which I don't know why any major YouTuber would play a Nintendo game on YouTube again.
I mean, there are channels that are specific Nintendo channels. Of course, they're YouTube channels if they're on YouTube. But, I mean, channels that are dedicated to Nintendo stuff. I mean, they really didn't have an option if they wanted to keep being a Nintendo channel.
Yeah, which I feel sorry for anyone that was just barely making ends meet as a dedicated Nintendo YouTuber.
Right. But, I mean, what are they going to do, I mean, their audience is people who want or who like Nintendo stuff. If they stop doing Nintendo stuff, odds are they would lose a huge chunk of their audience. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't come after me because my Steam profile is a piranha plant eating Mario, but that's beside the point.
Legal scandal. Scandalous. But okay, so we've got Sony, Nintendo, Konami.
Oh, well, I was skipping over Konami
Nope.
just because this is them fighting, these companies fighting internet. But Konami definitely has been screwing up big time lately.
I don't know. Konami screws up so much stuff. I wouldn't be surprised.
Didn't they just launch Metal Gear Online today or the last couple of days? And it's just a horrendous console port that lacks pretty much all the features that you'd require.
I have no idea.
I saw a couple things about it, but I didn't throw it on the list because I don't know enough about Metal Gear.
12 hours ago, Metal Gear Online now available for PC. So, again, I'm gonna be lazy. I'm not gonna read that any farther.
Too long, didn't read.
Okay, so
I know I saw a GIF of. I know this is a great way to learn information. Basically, of JonTron just going off, saying no text chat, no push to talk. It actually has a View Gamer card in the PC version.
Nice. Okay, so after Konami, who is next on your list?
Well, my list included Sega.
Sega?
Because of them doing DMCA copyright takedowns a year or two ago.
Okay, I was thinking more recent history than that. I'm thinking that was like 2, maybe even 3 years ago. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but once again, it is abusing the very tools that you're not supposed to abuse.
Right. Well, in that same vein, both Square Enix and Capcom have done the same thing in the last couple of years. So, I mean, the list is a lot more than 3.
Yeah, this was just the 3 that stood out in my mind.
I'm sure Konami's did that too. They just suck all around, so.
I am glad I'm not a Konami fan because I would just be so disappointed at this point.
Yeah, I'm not a Konami fan either.
At least I would have a pachinko machine.
I mean, I'm a fan of Metal Gear, but that's Kojima, not Konami. So.
Yeah, which good luck getting another Metal Gear game at this point.
Or
at least another good one.
We'll probably get from Kojima Studios or whatever his new production company is called. We'll probably get like Steel...
Copper Pinion.
There you go. We'll get something that's a Metal Gear-esque game. I'm sure we will. I mean, those games have been his passion for like 2 decades at this point. I can't imagine him just dropping. Actually, longer. The first Metal Gear came out in the 80s. So between 2 and 3 decades.
Oh, I got it. And I've lost it. Worm Gear.
Woodcog.
Woodcog, there you go.
Wooden Cog. There we go. That's his next set of games. Wooden Cog.
And they're going to be steampunk.
Maybe. So next on our topic list, or do you have more?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I really had to say about that. Just a quick throwing Nintendo under the bus after praising them recently.
Take that, Nintendo. Go under the bus.
We can't let them get too uppity, you know?
Yeah. All right. Next on our topic list, Minecraft Education Edition announced.
Another topic from just today.
Right. Now, we had like a very brief, 2-minute chat about this before we started. And initially we were
It really confused us.
Yeah, we were kind of baffled. We can see the educational value of a game like Kerbal Space Program, where you can learn science and math and physics and all kinds of stuff just from playing the game. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, and there's some issues with scale and stuff like that, but the concepts are there. The terminology is there. Minecraft is a game where you chop down trees with your hands and build houses out of blocks. But upon revisiting the article and discussing it a bit more, they're talking about using it to do things like model cells and things for kids to look at.
Well, the article has a giant version of the human eye.
Right.
Which I'm still not sure if having this be in Minecraft is a great teaching tool, just because the resolution on everything is so low.
Right.
If they had it where instead of every brick being a meter, every brick being a foot, where you have the higher resolution, so you're able to get the better picture, because the picture of the eye that they show in this article, until I read the the caption on it, I wouldn't have guessed that was an eyeball.
Yeah,
Would you?
No, I didn't think that was an eye when I looked at it. I really had no idea what it was. I can see an eye after,
I mean, maybe if you look at it and kind of squint, and forget whatever an eyeball is supposed to look like and make it just out of blocks instead. Oh,
yeah, when you squint, actually, that does look like an eye. It really does. In some ways, now that I've thought about it some, I can see where this makes a little bit more sense. I mean, Minecraft is a cultural touchstone from the last decade. My cousins, who are, they're like 10, 11, 12. They're more like nieces and nephews, but, family relations and all that. My cousins, who aren't big gamers for the most part, all play Minecraft. They all play Minecraft better than I do. And I mean, they're in that prime age that this would make an excellent teaching tool for them, because it's something that they're familiar with and they understand. And it's not always about the resolution or about how, and I know resolution is another way to say how clearly you can see something, but, how clearly they can see or be made to understand something, but it is something that they're familiar with and that they understand. And so that automatically gives it some bonus points as a teaching tool.
Yeah, that is correct. That it does put other concepts into a more familiar space. But I'm still wondering what they could teach on this exactly, because the article really just went into architecture and these structures like the human eye that they used in the example from the article. And beyond that, just general stuff like art.
Well, people have built things like calculators and very simple computers in Minecraft. It would be potentially a visual way to show students how those concepts work, like how bits work, for example.
Possibly, but once again, we're coming down to the problem of resolution. There's even the calculator in the computers took up massive areas.
Yeah, they took a long time and huge areas to build.
So you're just looking at these just absolute monstrosities and trying to use that as a teaching tool. I just, maybe it's just where I'm old.
I mean, you're not super old, and I'm in my 20s, and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, but see, I'm old for the internet.
I guess. I mean,
I'm actually about the average age of a person in the United States.
I mean, I grew up with the internet. I grew up with dial-up, but still, I grew up with the internet.
Yeah, see, I didn't grow up with the internet. I got the internet pretty much in high school, late middle school.
But I'm just not seeing it. I mean, they're saying that they want to put together some kind of network where that teachers can download.
Yeah, that is something
plans.
that they talked about, was that this version, and this isn't Minecraft. This is an educational version of Minecraft, which is cheaper. It's $5 per student, as compared to, what is it, 20, 25 now for Minecraft?
I don't know. When I bought Minecraft, it was $20, but I have no idea what it costs now.
And also, this is going to be smaller, more dedicated maps. So you'll have like the anatomy of the human eye as a map, or the eye, the brain, that sort of thing.
Right. I mean, more power to them. Anything that they can use as an educational tool, like things that can make kids understand really complex or subjects that they might think are boring or stupid. Things that can promote learning, I'm all for that. I just don't see how that this is going to work. And I'm not trying to sound negative about it. I genuinely don't understand what they could do with this outside of some really basic educational purposes.
Yeah, coming back to the article once again, they were talking about architecture. Are you really going to try to show these kids like the Louvre with a bunch of 3 meter large blocks? Can you imagine how terrible that's going to look compared to, well, coming back to the topic of last week, giving I know this is going to be hugely expensive and requires an absolute ton of powerful computers, but VR.
Yeah.
Or even a tablet program where instead of having the headset, you're able to look around with the tablet. Something like that. An augmented reality, I guess, would be the proper term for the tablet idea.
Yeah, and the Wii U uses that to some extent with its little tablet controller now.
So a dedicated program that's able to do that with an iPad or something, I think would be a lot greater use. I'm wondering if this is just Microsoft. Well, Microsoft bought Minecraft to put it into the classrooms as part of as one of their reasons to. It was one of their stated reasons to get it.
It could be that this is just a money grab, but to look at it from a different perspective, that this just popped into my head. Schools a lot of times are strapped for cash.
Yeah.
And the things that we're talking about are really, at least currently, really expensive solutions. I mean, the type of hardware that it takes.
Yeah, we're probably looking 10, 15 years for VR to be school accessible outside of, let's say, one headset.
Right. But Minecraft will run on literally anything. It just runs on everything. And so current school computers could utilize it. I suspect that the stripped down or perhaps more specialized education version will run on even lower specs.
Yeah, and we don't know if this is going to be the Java version or the C++, was it?
Yes, C++.
Rewrite?
Right. So,
which supposedly runs a lot better than the Java version, which I could easily see because the Java version is just terrible.
Right, but so I think that this might be a case of, all of these other solutions would definitely be better, but here's what we've got that everyone can afford and that will work. And it's kind of one of those necessity is the mother of all invention type deals. It's like, here's what we've got to work with. Let's make something out of it. I mean, I have no idea how this will work, but I guarantee you that a group of dedicated, smart people who have a passion for teaching will figure it out.
Yeah, I'm looking back at my teachers and how reluctant they were to embrace technology. I'm just seeing all the problems of it and not the answers that this would give. So maybe it's a part of just my educational background.
That's a fair point. I have a different experience, though, being a younger person, going through school later. I had a mix. I had those old teachers that had been there for forever and, knew my parents when they were in school. And they, very much shunned technology. But I had a handful of younger teachers who openly welcomed technology and didn't care if you had a cell phone in their class or whatever. So I'm sure in the almost 10 years since I've been in high school that has changed even more, leading into the direction of younger teachers more willing to accept technology. I bet it's not as bad as we're thinking it is.
Yeah, maybe this is just us being two old fuddy-duddies.
I am an old man at heart.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we're being negative on this for no good reason.
Yeah.
And that this is some amazing tool that we just don't have the background to be able to see it.
That's true. We're also approaching this from more of a games critic, maybe just more of a critical perspective. Neither of us are education people. Like, I'm not a teacher. I never trained to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher.
I don't even play one on TV.
But, you know.
And I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Hey-o. But, so, you know, we're not approaching it from that lens. I mean, this could be the type of tool that teachers have been wanting for a long time. This is something that I want to keep an eye on, just because I want to wish it the best. And that might seem a little odd, but I just...
Is it a giant blocky eye?
It's a giant blocky eye. 2 of them. With giant blocky glasses over them.
And a giant blocky optical nerve.
Aw, yeah. The best kind of optical nerve. Well, speaking
Which is technically correct.
That is technically correct. So speaking of things that Microsoft has done... see how I made that segue right there and then ruined it by calling out my segue?
Yep.
It would help if I read it off the topic list. The High Court will hear Microsoft's appeal over the Xbox lawsuit.
Yeah,
so,
which is the Supreme Court. Should have probably copied the other one, the other article I found. Supreme Court to hear Microsoft Xbox 360 console defect case.
Right. Well, it says in this article, like, the Supreme Court.
Just before we started recording, I found a better article that went a little bit more in depth.
Oh, okay. But, so basically, there's a class action lawsuit that has been formed against Microsoft over the Xbox 360. There were a number of problems with the early release Xbox 360s, but this particular case is going after the fact that the lasers were misaligned on some consoles, and they would carve out a giant scratch on your disc. I was thinking of a better word for it, but yeah, I mean,
gouge.
Yeah, I mean, it was awful.
A groove.
It looked like it looked like a giant burn mark. I actually had an Xbox that ate several of my discs that way before I finally sent it back to Microsoft and got a new one.
Yes, according to the original lawsuit, I'm reading off of an Ars Technica article, which is in the show notes, or at least should be.
It will be.
There was as many as 55,000 complaints about scratching issues in as early as 2008, which was actually fairly late in the 360 lifespan, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That was, I think, around the time that they started phasing out the first run of Xbox 360s. And
basically replacing consoles. One issue with another one, because the first run was the one that basically cooked itself to death.
Yep, Red Ring of Death. Had a few of those.
Yeah, and you wonder why I play on PC.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so Microsoft is saying that there was only, what was it, 0.5%?
Yeah, it was 0.4%, but then the Ars Technica gave 55,000. This is another issue of just playing the statistics. Well, it's only 0.5% or 55,000 people, depending on how you look at it.
Right, and the thing is, these are only people who reported it. What if it happened to somebody, only once, and they didn't report it? Because the laser, I mean, it was slightly misaligned, and so, if you got a disc that also was slightly off balance, I mean, like teeny tiny, near unmeasurable amounts, on the laser, that was enough to cause it to burn a huge scratch mark in your disc. But it might only happen to you one time, and you're like, oh, well, that's bad luck. I had it happen to me on multiple occasions. I had 3 discs that got ruined in a row by it. And Microsoft is blaming user error. But I'm pretty sure the Xbox console laying down on the little rubber pads like it's supposed to is not user error.
Yeah, wasn't it, if it was on its end, it was carving, but if it was laying flat, it was okay, or was it the other way around?
It didn't matter. It would happen both ways.
Okay, I heard. Once again, I'm thinking of articles that I read probably in about 2009, 2010. People trying to figure out what the hell was going on with the Xbox.
It was more likely to happen if you stood it up on its end, because the Xbox 360 was not very stable if you stood it up. And so it would wobble very easily. And if it wobbles, then obviously your disc has a very high chance of getting scratched by a laser missile line, because everything's kind of shaking around in there. But it would still happen if you laid it flat.
Yeah, and part of this court case is actually talking about whether or not this is covered under the warranty, which is an interesting statement.
I have to say that I had a lot of problems with Xbox 360. I was an early adopter. I mean, I bought the console on release day with I think it was a Target bundle that came with Call of Duty 2 and Need for Speed Most Wanted, I want to say. I don't know, it was whatever the first one Need for Speed game was that came out on Xbox 360. But I think, let's see, I had 13 Xbox 360s that all died from red rings or had other various problems. And I never paid for one of them. Microsoft replaced all of them under warranty. I mean, I could be both the luckiest and the unluckiest Xbox consumer of all time, but I have to say they covered all of them for warranty issues. So on the bright side, they at least handled that properly.
Yeah, but now they're trying to block this class action lawsuit, saying that, those discs aren't under warranty. It doesn't cover the media that you're putting into it, which just doesn't feel right, you know?
No, that doesn't feel right. I mean, it's a one piece of hardware, because a disc is, I mean, the actual disc part is, a physical thing. So you got one piece of hardware interacting with another piece of hardware, and your hardware damaged the other hardware. It's like your thing was involved, and you should be liable to replace the thing that was designed to work with your thing. If that does that make sense? Are you following?
Well, I know my thing needs replacing.
Well, you should probably go get that checked out by a doctor.
Oh, you don't want to check it?
Well, maybe after the show. But I don't have too much of a stake in this, and honestly, this is probably one of those cases that most of the money's going to go to the lawyers, anyways.
Well, it is talking about a class action lawsuit, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So
besides, this is from about 4 years ago. That's just the lawsuit, with the issue going all the way back to 2008. So, it's over a console generation ago, obviously, but
yeah,
it's just forever in internet terms.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm sure somebody somewhere will say whether or not the case actually went forward and who won or lost, but honestly, this is an interesting news story, and it raises up some interesting points about Microsoft's early business practices with their consoles. But
yeah, they basically were putting these things out as cheaply as possible, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, what it was is they wanted to be a loss leader. Microsoft got into the game really late on consoles. The original Xbox came out alongside the PlayStation 2 in the early 2000s, and the 360. They wanted to get as much market share as possible, so they pumped these consoles out before they were ready. The first version of the Xbox 360 had something like a 25 or a 26% fail rate.
It's just absurd.
Which is yeah, it's awful. But
yeah, I heard some people talking about, and I can't find any info on it, so it's probably wrong, that part of the reason why the failure rate was so high on the original Xbox 360 was that there was some sort of classification thing with how the console was designed, that it was marketed as a toy instead of an electronic device. And because of that, they couldn't use lead in the solder or I think it was the solder for particular parts. And after a lot of heating and unheating, or a lot of heating and cooling, the solder would just break down, and that would cause the red ring of death.
I have no idea if that is specifically true or not. I've never heard that before.
I'm probably half remembering a rumor from 2005.
I mean, the solder was what failed most of the time to cause the red ring of death, and you could kind of fix it by
reflowing the solder, essentially, because making the console just overheat by wrapping a towel around it.
Yeah, right. You could wrap a towel around it, or you could stick it in the oven. Like, there were a whole bunch of methods for actually making it hot enough to resolder everything.
Yeah, it's called reflowing the solder. It's actually used fairly often to resurrect dead PC parts.
I mean, you can only do that so many times before it just didn't work, period. But, I don't know. The Xbox 360 is so far removed. I mean, it became a completely different product by the end of its life cycle. I mean, even now, when the Xbox One came out, they released another version of the Xbox 360.
Actually, I'm looking on the Wikipedia article, and they do talk about lead-free solder, so that's possible. It was possibly them marketing it as a toy, or having it branded as a toy instead of an electronic device. So that's actually possible.
Yeah, I mean, I had never heard that before.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I heard it from.
Well,
like I said, I'm half remembering a rumor from a decade ago.
A long time ago in the 80s, when the NES came back to market in the US, they marketed it as a toy instead of an electronic device, so that it would show up in the toy section of the store and kids would see it. I'm not saying that you're like putting together two things that you heard, but I mean, I do know that was a real thing.
And there's also a real difference between the amount of heat that a Nintendo puts out and an Xbox 360.
True.
So if they had to do the lead-free solder to get that certification to pass, to make it a toy instead of an electronic device, which I can't remember if the 360 was in toy sections or if it was in electronic sections, or both.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a 360 anywhere except an electronic section, but I mean, I could be wrong. I don't go wandering back through store toy aisles and electronic sections all the time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in the electronic section, so it could have been just a marketing thing as well.
Right.
But the amount of heat that both those things put out, Nintendo could have gotten away with the lead-free solder. Granted, the Nintendo had its own host of problems that we really don't need to go into.
Nope, that's news from, 30-odd years ago?
Yeah.
That was before I was even born.
That was when I was a kid.
You old man, you.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
All right. So next on the topic list, since we have got plenty of time left, video game piracy / games preservation. Originally on the topic list, it was just video game piracy, but I kind of shoehorned in the games preservation because there's a lot of issues that companies and copyright holders bring up whenever people try to get access to older games that are either not for sale or are for sale at ridiculously high prices by third parties, or for games that are basically dead and people are trying to resurrect them for preservation's sake. So I felt like this was a much larger topic than just piracy.
Yeah, it's a hot button debate between the two sides, and actually really a legal gray area, especially when you start getting into things with emulation, which is technically piracy, but it's also its own different thing.
Right. So, first of all, let's state how we feel about piracy. I'll go first.
Okay.
Piracy can be good or bad, or I should say okay or not okay, on a few factors, in my opinion. If you want to go pirate a brand new game that just released, I don't think that's cool. If a lot of people say, oh, I don't have the money, or I disagree with the company's practices, I think the best way to do that is to just not buy the game. If you don't have the money, games go on sale regularly on Steam. You can pick up a used copy, or you can just wait until the game actually drops in price naturally. If you disagree with the company's practices, I don't think that pirating the game tells them that you disagree with them. That just tells them that you're willing to do something, legal gray area, but for the most part considered illegal. You're just willing to do something illegal. I think the best way to tell them that you don't like their practices is to, 1, voice your concerns, and 2, don't buy the game. Now, I think piracy can be a good thing for either people in countries who don't have access to video games normally. There's a lot of, I don't want to say third world countries, but a lot of countries around the world that have stricter internet laws, like, for example, China or, where is it in South America?
Brazil?
Yeah, Brazil. And I mean, there's plenty of others, but those are just the two that come to mind. That have got a lot stricter internet laws, a lot stricter import laws. And so companies don't always ship games, or perhaps they're not even allowed to ship games to those countries. So if you want to play a game in one of those countries, piracy might be your only way to get the game.
I'll add to that, before getting to my thoughts, censored versions of games, cutting out the violence in a game in Germany, or cutting out sections of South Park, The Stick of Truth in Australia.
Right.
What if you wanted to see those scenes? You have two options: either pirate the game or watch it on YouTube.
Right. And I'm okay with piracy in those situations. And since you mentioned emulation, I think that I don't personally believe that emulation is piracy. 9 times out of 10, the games that you emulate are games that can't be played anymore because the hardware's dead, or it's just so old and impractical to have that emulating it on modern hardware is much easier.
Yeah, most emulation, at least at this point, the newest emulators are in the PS2 era, GameCube era. I think the Wii is emulated at this point, or close to it. But no modern consoles.
Right. Also,
I know that there's work on a PS3 and Xbox 360 emulators.
Also, I emulate games. I emulate PS2 games. Used to be frequently, but I'm kind of in a phase where I'm not playing those old games. But the thing is, all the games that I emulate are games that I have purchased before. And, I don't have a PS2 anymore, but I still want to go back and enjoy some of those experiences that I had when I was younger. And the only way for me to do that is to either find a PS2, which is not super hard, but, find one, find the games, which is harder. These games I'm talking about are much more obscure games. If you're listening and you know what the Naval Ops series is, send me a tweet or something and we can be best friends. But to buy one of those...
You're replacing me?
Well, do you know what the Naval Ops series is?
Give me some time on Google and I could try it.
Fair enough. You can still be my friend.
Okay.
I'm just going to do a really quick search on Amazon to see how much Naval Ops costs.
Yeah, a lot of these games, the physical version, the legal version, you're looking at some of them being hundreds and hundreds of dollars. They are just rare, or they're just not available.
Right. So on Amazon, depending on which version of the game you get and which condition you get, ranges from $8, so not bad, all the way up to $90.
Yeah, which I imagine the $90 is probably a sealed copy.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't, I have some money, but if I spend $90 on that, plus the price of a PS2 and a controller and a memory card and some adapter cables to make it work with my HDTV, I'm looking at spending $150 to play just one game, and I don't have that kind of money to spend on things all the time.
Yeah, the physical games for the older generations are more collector's items at this point, unless you find them used at at a yard sale or a garage sale or that sort of thing.
Right. So, I mean, that's how I feel about it. There are times when it's acceptable and times when it's not. And I think, honestly, more often than not, piracy is actually a pretty acceptable way to play games. And I'm not just saying that, I don't want to spend money on a game or something like that. I mean, look at my Steam library. I've probably spent $1,000 or more over the...
I know how much I've spent and how much my Steam library is worth.
Yeah, I don't know. I should look that up at some point. But, I mean, I've spent a lot of money.
I'll look it up for you.
Okay. I've spent a lot of money over the years on Steam. I've spent a lot of money over the years on consoles and games for consoles and that sort of thing. So I'm not opposed to spending money on something, but I think that more often than not, piracy is an okay way to consume something, and we just have it in our heads, and it's been beat into us over the years that just all piracy is illegal and bad and should never be done. But I think there's a lot more circumstances where it could be allowed than when it shouldn't be allowed.
Okay, I'm bringing up your Steam profile now.
Okay.
Let's see. Current. Do you want to take a guess at current value of your Steam library? This is current value, not what you paid.
Current value. I'm going to guess $2,600.
You're low. You're way low.
Wow. Okay, what is it?
$4,145.
Man.
Total cost with sales, $1,060, with an average price of $10.44 per game.
So yeah, I don't have a problem spending money on video games.
Do you want to hear mine?
Sure. You've got like, what, 3 times more video games than I do?
My current value is $8,058. And to get my profile with sales is just over $2,000, with an average price of $7.39.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Now, let's just put it this way. I load up my Steam library in this page, and it takes a while.
You win Steam for today.
But I also have a better average price than you.
Yeah, so you double win Steam for today. Actually, you triple win because you have more games than me.
And I have 4 times the hours as you. Okay.
So
I'm done now.
Right. So how do you feel about piracy?
I agree with you on the most part. I do think pirating games as a form of protest, saying to the developers, we're not going to take this bullshit. I'm going to play your game, but not going to pay for it, is garbage. That doesn't work. All that tells you, or tells the developers, is that the gamers aren't willing to pay.
Right.
So they'll just steal it instead, which technically it's not stealing because you're not taking a product off a shelf, but that's, you're getting into semantics.
Yeah, that's semantics at that point. Although I do agree with you. I don't think that you can actually steal a digital thing, because to steal implies that you take it away. They have technically an infinite supply of digital copies.
Yeah. And I also agree with you on some areas just get utterly screwed on pricing, so I understand why they pirate.
Yeah.
And I obviously brought up the censorship part, so I agree with that. But there's actually another way, or another reason to pirate a modern game that I completely agree with.
Okay.
That I kind of mentioned in the last episode is demo.
Oh, right. Yes.
There's no demos these days. We talked briefly last episode about EA Access, the PC version of the EA Vault, how they're locking away demos behind that.
Right.
And it's very rare to actually see a modern game, especially a AAA game, release a demo. And a lot of these games, especially on launch, have had some horrendous issues. So pirating a game to trad on your hardware, even if you know the system specs and could see it in the store, I completely understand. Because there are just so many question marks when it comes to modern gaming, if the game is going to even work. And the fact that there's no way to even try the game before you buy it, the closest you could do is look it up on YouTube and look at a Let's Play series and see, oh, that looks interesting, I guess. But there's a huge difference between watching a video and actually experiencing the game itself. I completely understand why someone would pirate in that situation.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I do think that a system like Steam Refunds goes a little ways towards solving that problem.
Yeah, but that's also a very, very short window of time as well.
That's true. There can be a lot of breaking bugs or gameplay that, just that you don't enjoy that ruins the experience that could happen after 2 hours.
The Steam refund window is 2 hours. And a game that has a huge cinematic opening where it takes 30 minutes to get to the actual gameplay eats up a lot of that window.
Right. Yeah, that actually didn't cross my mind, but I agree with you. I think that's a valid reason to pirate a game is to test it. Although that is also a gray area. I have seen people say, I pirate games just to test them, but then they never go back and pay for them if they actually like the experience.
Yeah, and another legal gray area that I completely understand on pirating a modern game. Well, this is technically pirating because, once again, a legal gray area, and also you really should be buying the game if you're enjoying it, is to get a DRM-free copy if the DRM is causing problems.
You mean if the DRM is made by Ubisoft or EA or...
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, if it's DRM.
Yeah, there's been several cases where the DRM or it trying to hook into servers or whatever have just called micro stutters or the game just crashing.
Or not even working. What do you do, for example, if you buy a game that requires an online DRM check-in and the server doesn't exist anymore?
Exactly.
Think of games like...
Which that gets more into the whole games preservation side of this argument as well.
Right, that is true. But, games like Battlefront 2 and, a whole host of games no longer have online support. But... and Battlefront 2, as far as I know, doesn't have an online-based DRM. But say that it did. What are you going to do? Go buy the new Battlefront? I was joking. Nobody should go buy that.
The new Battlefront is just... I'll have the quick aside, and then we'll get back to the whole piracy thing. Is that the new Battlefront, everything I saw pre-release... Every time there was a new news article about it, it was saying that this game will not have this feature from the previous Battlefront games. I don't know why people bought it. I'll be perfectly frank. I don't understand.
Star Wars the game. It's
pretty.
Yeah, it's a pretty Star Wars game.
We're getting back to piracy. To get a DRM free copy, which for AAA games, good luck.
Yeah.
Only ones that you could find are... made by a company called CD Projekt.
I was going to say The Witcher 3 was DRM free.
And I went immediately there.
Yeah.
That's literally the only AAA style game. And technically, I'm not sure if you could call The Witcher AAA since they're kind of an independent developer, but once again, semantics.
Right.
So that's what that's about the only thing I could really think of on modern piracy.
Now...
Or the older games, once again, it comes down to a pricing issue.
Right. So,
and piracy is a symptom of a problem that there's just no one selling these games anymore. Take a game that was recently re-released on Steam, Incredible Creatures. Good luck finding that before the re-release. There was just nowhere to get it. It wasn't being sold anywhere, and the best place you could find it was on Amazon as used copies, and who knows if those copies even work. And if I recall correctly, the price was just expensive as hell.
I'm looking up Incredible Creatures right now. I've never heard of that before.
A real-time strategy game of combining creatures to make your units.
Is it Impossible Creatures?
Or Impossible Creatures, yeah.
Okay, I've seen this game before. I don't think I've ever played it. I don't think I've seen it.
Crossed Impossible and Incredible.
No, that's okay. Now, a recent experience from our personal history is that we are trying to put together a Let's Play series in SWAT 4. And the only way to get that game is to either pay, $90 for a copy on Amazon?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 90, and that, once again, good luck if, that's more... Ooh, actually, I just looked up SWAT Gold PC, $160 plus $7 shipping.
Right. So, I mean, we can't afford that. That would be $320.
That's a collector's item. That is not meant to be played.
Right.
Let's be honest.
So the only way that we can get the game is to pirate it.
Which then you run into the issues of trying to get getting the cracks to work.
Which my crack has not worked. That's why I have been unable to play the game. It just won't work. It still asks me for a CD key every time.
Yeah, see, mine actually worked first time, and I also had the tools to just mount the images just because I toy around with emulation at times, and some of them require you to mount a disc, or it's easier to just mount a disc instead of burning it.
Well, I've got the stuff on my PC to do it. I did that with Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. Mm-hmm. That game costs over $300 if you want to buy it. And it's a game that I enjoyed a long time ago on PlayStation 2. So, I mean, I'm familiar with doing that.
Yeah, which we're now fully into the game preservation side of it. And obviously, we both agree with games that have turned into collector's items that are just not available on the market anymore, that they should be out there. There's the term abandonware. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of the term abandonware.
Yeah, we're more into the term abandonware. Well, I should clarify what abandonware is. Abandonware is essentially a piece of software that has lost all its support. And at times, the developers have either gone out of business or merged with another company, and they don't technically exist anymore. Which is the case with SWAT 4, which was a Sierra game.
Right, and Sierra has not existed for a while.
Well, actually, Sierra's back technically, but that's beside the point.
Right.
It's not the same Sierra.
No, it's not. But, I mean, I think that those games should be available to everyone. And the fact that you have to actually pirate them instead of being able to just download a working version of the game right off the bat, I don't like that. I get it, but I don't like that. And it really makes me sad whenever companies go after people who are trying to preserve games. I forget what it is. There's a video game museum that is attempting to preserve old games on old hardware, and they have gotten into more legal battles with companies not wanting these literally decades-old abandoned games. These companies not wanting them to do that because, oh, you're stealing our software and not paying us for it.
Looking it up now.
I can't think of one in recent history. I want to say it was a couple of months ago, though. Maybe in like October. I heard someone mention it on a podcast. There's a video game institute that's preserving classic video games, and they were sued by a company for not purchasing the software.
Which there is literally no way to purchase the software.
Right, there's literally no way to purchase the software from the company. At best, they might be able to purchase it from an individual, but again, it's an abandoned game that it was an old physical copy of a game that they were making run on a PC just so that they could preserve the game and as close to its original state as possible.
Well, I found an article talking about just the general legal battles. The Entertainment Software Association? This is not a museum itself. It's more of a think tank, I think it is.
Perhaps. That doesn't sound right, but that might be it. I'll spend some time...
A Washington, D.C. group that defends gaming industry interests, which makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Oh, wait.
I'll spend some time Googling and finding the case that I'm talking about, and it'll be linked below. But there was one specific case in mind that they were discussing, and someone came to defend them and fight the legal battle, and the company was like, actually, it's not worth our time. So once they were actually taken to court, they backed down because they didn't want to deal with it. But really, it's disgusting. Like, no other media has this problem.
Yeah, can
no
you
other
imagine,
art form has this problem.
It's the disposability of video games, and especially video game consoles. PCs have it a little bit, but not nearly as badly, because you have emulation, which allows you to go back to the older software that doesn't run natively on modern operating systems.
Right.
But the fact that, well, outside of getting the digital version of like a PS2 game, you can't run that on a PS4. You have to wait for them to port it over and do whatever they have to get it working on the modern console. Whenever you upgrade from one console to another, you're throwing away literally your gaming library unless you keep that console and hope nothing happens to it.
Right, because eventually it will not be supported anymore. Eventually, all of the spare parts will dry up.
Which is why emulation is so important in this. And it's kind of a related topic because it keeps these games alive even though the hardware is gone.
And I think that's important. I mean, there are art institutes dedicated to the classics of film, the classics of literature, the classics of photography. And
yes,
video
and I
games...
think video gaming is the next art form.
They are. I mean,
is a topic for another day, but it's something that needs to be preserved. And the way game devs are treating gamers, especially with games that require always-on connection to be able to work. Can you imagine trying to preserve Diablo or Diablo 3, let's say 20 years from now?
Yeah. In order
There's
to
no way to
preserve
do
that
it.
without having a cracked version of the game, you would have to emulate an entire server architecture for that game to connect to. And that's probably just as, and I'm doing air quotes here, illegal as cracking the game itself to make it run without connecting to a server.
Yeah, we're looking at just a rabbit hole of illegal issues. And I'm wondering, where will gaming be in 50 years? How will these games be preserved? Because they need to be preserved. If you don't remember your history, how are you going to know your future? I know that's being very high and mighty for video games, but it's an art form.
Well, not just as an art form, but video games are now the largest entertainment industry worldwide. They passed film a couple of years ago in revenue that they take in. I mean, they are the top of the food chain when it comes to the entertainment industry.
Yeah, but then you have game devs pulling the games completely offline. I mean, imagine trying to preserve like the demo for Silent Hills, which was on mobile, I think, at one point. Or was it another game that I'm thinking of?
No, Silent Hills was only on PS4.
Yeah, there was a Konami game that they had a demo on. No, it was the PS4. Now that I think about it, where they had a demo out for it, and they pulled it and actually deleted it off people's accounts unless you had your console disconnected from the internet.
Yep. And that's disgusting, trying to erase it. And that was one of the things that brought up this whole video game preservations thing. Like this digital property that only existed digitally, a company tried to wipe it off the map. And thankfully, there were some people who were wanting to preserve it, and they didn't have their consoles connected. They didn't receive the update. They didn't lose the game. But it just... I'm taken aback at a company who, for better or for worse, like, they had a project that got screwed up. Actually, honestly, it's Konami. Konami's the worst. I'm not surprised that they did this. But, I mean, they tried to erase what would have been a huge cultural touch point in video game history. Whether or not you like Silent Hill, whether or not you like horror games.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking mobile for some reason.
Yeah, who knows. But they had one of the greats from video games, which was Kojima, matched with one of the greats from film, Guillermo del Toro, to produce something that I don't want to say magical, or I don't want to make it seem like... I mean, we have no idea exactly what it would be like, but I've got a feeling that if anything was, at least in our current time, going to really breach the gap between film and games and create a true dare I say, cinematic gaming experience.
Oh boy, you'll get Total Biscuit on you.
I know, but I mean like a true blend. I think that people who know the gaming industry are going to get what I mean, because I can't really explain it any better than that. But I mean, that was our shot, and they screwed it up, and then they tried to cover it up and remove it from existence. And just things like that need to be preserved. Those are our cultural touch points in the gaming community. We need those in order to grow as a medium. And we need our failures just as much as we need our successes. That's how things grow.
Yeah, I just hope that in the future we'll be able to properly preserve these games. But as we move to more digital-only media, I mean, PC is pretty much there already. It's very hard to find physical media for PC.
Right.
And even the physical games that are out there. What was it? Fallout 4 only had a third of the game, and the rest of it was a digital download?
Yeah, and if you bought the physical copy of Metal Gear Solid 5, the only file on the disc was a Steam download key.
Yeah.
So, what
even,
there needs to...
physical media for PC is already gone.
Yeah. What there needs to be, as scary as this could turn out to be, is a big court case. We need one company to go after somebody who's preserving video games, and we need to have a decision. I think that the decision needs to be in favor of games preservation, but even if it's not, at least we get some precedent, and then we can work with it. As much as it would suck to lose that opening battle, at least we would have a line drawn, and we would know where everybody stands.
Yeah, I just hope that decision isn't made in the next, let's say, 5 years, because I think a lot of judges are rather old on the federal level.
Yeah. I mean, they might be old, but they're not all stuck in the past.
Yeah, but then you get... I know Ted Stevens is dead, but the infamous Ted Stevens talking about the internet, a series of tubes, which isn't technically wrong, but he's acting like the internet's a series of vacuum tubes.
Right.
I mean, I could understand where he was trying to go with it and explain it to people that literally don't care about the internet and still making decisions about the internet's future. Granted, this was this 10 years ago now?
Oh, man, I don't know how long ago it was.
I know the whole Ted Stevens thing was just ancient. I mean, he's been dead for quite a while, so. But these lawmakers and judges are just not as tech literate as they need to be making these decisions. So that's why I kind of hope that when the court case comes down, because this is a battle and will eventually come to court, I hope it's not terribly soon.
I don't know how I feel about when it actually should be. Part of me wants it to be soon, and part of me part of me agrees with you that it needs to be in the future whenever there's more understanding from the people who are actually in charge of it. But
yeah, I just look at I'm not trying to get too political here, but several of the presidential candidates, we're recording this in January of 2016, several of the presidential candidates coming up, which they haven't been weeded out yet, obviously, because we're still in the primary season. A lot of them are very anti-video game.
Yep. I won't get too political. I won't get political at all because, well, I don't want to open that can of worms.
I'm not naming names or even parties, because honestly, it's both sides.
Well, if you live in the United States and you know anything about politics, you know who the offenders are. And I'll just leave it at that.
Especially if you're alive in the 90s.
Hi-yo. Well, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say on the subject. I feel like we've both made our views well known and have made a good case for it. Do you have anything else you want to add?
We are a pirate.
Yarr. So, now that we've wrapped up games, piracy, and preservation, and have stamped the video game logic decision stamp on it, let's move on.
Raised the Jolly Roger.
And raised the Jolly Roger. Let's move on to mail call / community corner. We actually
toying around with the name on this a little bit more, trying to be a little bit more inclusive for any tweets that may come in and YouTube comments and email.
Right, which we actually got an email this week.
Yeah, the crickets are dead. They're going back to the comment section on my YouTube videos.
At least until next week. We'll see what happens next week. Rage, so the person who sent us an email is from another podcast that we do. I should say the other podcast that we do, Kerblecast. And
the other podcast that you do, I only pop up every so often.
Fair enough, but you're still on there, and he makes reference to your velvety smooth voice, so why don't you read his email out?
Okay, this is from Chris, and that's pronounced with a K as in chemist. He wrote that. You might get some more emails if you actually left an email address in a visible place. Like, I don't know, in the description next to send us stuff, which is a good point. I'm pretty sure I have that in my YouTube comment or in my YouTube description, but then again, I don't get a lot of views. That's just me talking, by the way.
Yeah, I could have swore that I put it in mine too, but maybe I didn't. If I did not, I will be sure to go back and add that to the previous ones.
Yeah, I have a tiered structure where I go the order that we have the list or the our show notes in, and everything else is down at the bottom since that's where we usually talk about that stuff. But I'll move that up to the top, starting with this one. Hopefully get a little bit more visibility. But getting back to the letter, I've decided to send this as hearing you only have 12 subscribers gave me a chance to be the very first listener with an email read on the podcast. Feel free to praise me forever, and we will. You've destroyed the crickets.
Yes.
Regarding the podcast itself, you've got some nice things going for you. Mostly Rage's voice. And no, I'm not... I did not put that in there. That's actually in the email.
That's actually in the email.
Even though I've gotten praise from Kerblecast, I've gotten praise from you, I just do not hear it. I've listened to myself, and I'm thinking, where is this praise coming from? I do not understand.
Even if you don't hear it, though, your voice is definitely better than mine. I mean, I don't have a bad voice, but you've got a much better voice.
Which I still just don't hear it. Maybe it's just the fact that I've heard it for so long. But once again, getting back to things, we digress even on the emails, I guess.
Absolutely. That's part of the fun, though.
Since the Kerblecast seems to be on hiatus with everyone mourning the departure of Nos, I really appreciate the weekly dosage of velvety smooth. Anyway, the format's fine, quality of the audio is above expectations, keep up the great work, and I'm sure you'll have another dozen listener in a couple of years.
I hope it's a lot faster than a couple of years. We're up to 15 this week. So we had 12 last week, we got 3 more. Thanks to everybody.
I got a couple more views on the VOD and Massive Sarcasm Quotes on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, as did I. Thanks to everybody out there who's listening and subscribing, and if you shared, we really appreciate it, and keep sharing. I have to say...
a big thank you for everyone coming over from Kerblecast, and hopefully you'll be back before too long.
Yep. As one of the hosts on Kerblecast, we're working out some bugs, let's say. That's probably the best way to say it.
Okay. I'll have to ask you about a couple things off air.
Well, I mean, yeah. The one thing that I don't understand is... maybe just I'm not an audiophile, so I don't notice, but lots of people comment on how good our audio quality is, and a lot of people leave me that comment on my YouTube channel on my other videos. I mean, it sounds not bad to me, but I don't understand why people say it's such a high quality. Maybe you can shed some light on it, or one of our listeners can.
I don't think it's that our audio quality is so high. I think the bar is set so low for most people. A lot of podcasts and even YouTubers will use headset mics. They'll not really care about the audio balance. I actually do a lot of cleanup on my audio, which Shrink has actually heard my entire process. It was, like half a dozen steps?
Yeah, there's a lot. You do more to yours than I do to mine, but I still do.
Granted, it doesn't really change the pitch of my voice all that much. It does it a little bit, but it also cleans it up. It gets rid of all the background noise. It evens out my tone a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I do a decent amount of work to mine. We also both have really good mics. You use an actual desktop mic.
Yeah.
And then I've got a lapel mic, actually, that I wear. I have extremely high ceilings in my house, and so my actual desktop mic picks up a lot. I mean, a lot of an echo. And
yeah, where I moved actually has high ceilings, but I'm found a configuration for my desktop mic that actually works. It's also, it probably helps that my desktop mic isn't omnidirectional. It's a directional mic, so I'm talking directly into it.
Yeah, my desktop mic is omnidirectional.
Yeah, well, there's your problem.
Yeah, go figure. But I mean, this lapel mic is still very high quality. I've been quite pleased with it. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess I never thought of it from that context. Most of the stuff that I tend to listen to is done by professionals, I guess, like Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling, for example.
Yeah, same here. A few of the podcasts I listen to are of lower quality, but it tends to be the stuff that doesn't really matter. Like, I mentioned them on Kerbalcast talking about the shows I listen to when someone asked about other podcasts we listen to. The Detectives of Old Time Radio. His quality isn't that great, but then again, you also have to balance that against the actual content of the shows. A lot of these detective shows that he runs are 70 years old. Or, somewhere in the 50 to 70-year-old range. So the audio quality doesn't matter as much for his own voice because it would just throw it off. If he was perfectly crystal clear and he did all this work to his audio, and then you got to the actual content and you had these hisses and pops and everything. So I completely understand why he doesn't spend the time. Plus, he puts out 6 episodes a week, so that's also a lot of time.
I have to say that it's not that bad to edit this show. I can do it in about an hour. And we're between 2 and 2.5 hours most of the time. So, I mean, your mileage may vary. Not to say anyone else's methods take too long or not enough time, but editing this show together is not that hard.
Yeah, I think it also depends on your general setup because even though I do a lot of cleanup on my audio, most of it's automated. I click 2 buttons and it does 5 out of the 6 steps.
Right.
Only thing I really do that's not automated is a noise removal because that changes slightly depending on if the heater's on or if there's something going on outside or if the wind's blowing, that sort of thing.
Right.
So that's really the only thing that you can't automate.
Right.
Everything else is just the normal settings, and I just click that and go get a sandwich.
I have to do, obviously I do noise removal. I still have background noise, but
I'm going to have to teach you to make chains.
Well, see...
Wait, that sounds wrong in our context.
Most of what I do is the noise removal, and then I have to do an equalization. My voice varies in pitch because I'm more of a tenor.
And I was called a baritone?
Yeah. So I have a lot of spikes in my voice, and I have to go in and I have to lessen those. And I can't just apply a blanket equalization of the entire thing. I've tried that before. And you get sections that, even though they're supposed to be equalized, they don't sound equal. So I have to go through and kind of look for the spikes and equalize those individually.
My voice, even though I still don't hear how great my voice is after all the praise, which thank you once again for the praise. It's at least somewhat equal until I start cackling.
Yeah. I might release a picture at some point in the future with our waveforms compared to one another's. Rage's waveform is very, very steady, and mine has very many peaks and dips in it. And I mean, it's just my natural speaking voice. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, maybe, but I'm not going to go through vocal training and all that jazz. I can just fix it in post. So...
Yeah, but think of it this way. If you actually put the work in, you can also exploit that during your streams.
Yeah, that's fair, but maybe if there's more people that come to our streams. Since we're not doing Monday Night Kerbal right now, the stream viewership has dropped off a lot. Most people come to watch the Kerbal content. But to be honest, I have more fun doing Warframe and then whatever game we play on Friday.
Yeah, which we're going to have to figure that one out, probably off stream.
Right.
Or off recording, I should say, which we do a duo stream on Wednesday nights at... this is where you jump in.
Right, this is where I jump in. At twitch.tv/jarthur4707.
Time may be helpful as well.
At 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to leave all that in. I might cut out like the tiny pause that we had, but I'm just going to leave the rest of it in. Yep, we play Warframe every Wednesday night, and then Friday nights at the same Twitch, twitch.tv/jarthur4707.
Same Twitch time, same Twitch channel.
Absolutely. We play random games on Friday. We actually didn't play last Friday. I was letting my voice rest. But I don't know what we're going to play this Friday. I had an idea, but it suddenly left me, and we'll discuss it all later. But
okay.
So there's that, and there's our letter for this week. Please send us more.
Hey, the crickets are dead.
Absolutely.
I didn't have any tweets on my end. Did you?
I did not have any tweets or YouTube comments this week. So.
Hey, but at least we had some feedback, and thank you once again for that. If you wish to send us feedback, you can send it at VGLPodcast@gmail.com.
That's VGLPodcast@gmail.com. Moving swiftly on to our final topic of the show, let us discuss the Steam weekly sales. As always, we pick two games. They could be two positive, two negative, a positive and a negative, but our recommendations...
And we don't share our picks as well before the podcast.
Nope.
Because that makes it more fun, even though I think we're going to be sharing one this week.
Well, you lead off then.
Okay, my big one for this one, which I have two positives, is Dragon Age Origins Ultimate Edition.
Okay, so I kind of cheated this week, and I picked three. I picked Dragon Age Origin Ultimate Edition as my third one because, obviously I would recommend that. And I've talked about it several times, and I'll probably talk about it some more times. So, yeah, that was kind of like my secret cheating third recommendation.
You just wanted to be different and have two ones, didn't you?
I did.
Because you knew I was going to pick that.
I figured you would.
Really, Dragon Age Origins is the only Dragon Age game I would recommend.
It's definitely the best one, by far. And it's...
Dragon Age 2, it just had so many problems. I only played the demo of it. This was back when there was such a thing as demos, I might add.
To be honest, my biggest problem with Dragon Age 2 was that the story was too shallow.
I played a bit of the demo. It was like, no, it just isn't clicking for me.
Right. I prefer...
And Dragon Age Inquisition, what a show. It feels like it's gone down the MMO route of a single-player game that's wants to be World of Warcraft, but, yeah, single-player.
Inquisition definitely went down the MMO route for sure with their... a lot of the way that their quests are done. A lot of them are like fetch quests, but it still had a lot of story, and that's what I play those games for. I'm the kind of person that like collects all the books and then goes and reads them.
Oh, you would have probably loved me playing Oblivion then, because I just had this entire library.
I have done that in Oblivion, Morrowind, and Skyrim.
Oh, Oblivion was just the easiest to get them on the damn shelves.
No, that was Skyrim.
Well, I never really got into Skyrim.
Skyrim actually has a mechanic where you can walk up to the bookshelf and place books on the shelf. Like, it pulls up a menu, and it's like, what books would you like to put on the shelf? And you put them on there, and then they appear on the shelf.
Maybe it's just I just didn't get too far into Skyrim. It seems like the Elder Scrolls game as they go along. I'm spending less and less time on them, but we're getting off topic once again.
Right. So that was your first pick.
Yeah, which we should probably go into. It's a very deep RPG. on the computer, it has a tactical view where it looks like an old CRPG, and the combat is actually really satisfying. You're able to pause at any point. It's not a full real-time battle, but at the same time it is.
If you've ever played...
It's the FTL model where it's fought in real time, but you're able to pause at any point and give orders.
If you've ever played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, it's exactly like that.
Something I liked about the combat, which I haven't seen since until Divinity Original Sin, was the ability to combine different spells to make different effects.
Right.
It's kind of rare to see that in a RPG these days.
Yeah, which is interesting because it feels like a mechanic that, given modern technology, could be fleshed out so much more.
Yeah, only one that I can think of offhand was Divinity, that allows you to combine different spells to do enhanced effects.
What?
Like in Dragon Age, you could put down a pool of grease or oil or whatever it was, and then light it on fire and have a hotter burning patch of fire to separate yourself from the enemy.
There's another game. It was like a first-person shooter-esque type game, but you were a mage. I cannot for the life of me think of that game, but it had that. Like, you could combine spells and...
Is it recent?
It's fairly recent. I think it came out in 2015.
Battle Mage, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. It had a lot of that. Yeah, I love Dragon Age. I've got it on Steam.
I'm pretty sure just about everyone knows of Dragon Age. If they don't, then they've probably either just gone into gaming or been living under a rock.
Right.
But I think it's very well worth picking up, even though I do have a lot of problems with the EA these days. This is a game that's still on Steam, and it's the only way to get the DLC, which I have a lot of problems with DLC as well, but there's some good ones, there's some bad ones in this, and there's actually a couple really good ones in this.
Yeah, the DLC for Dragon Age Origins was ultimately positive. They had a couple of really crappy things, but
it did go across the entire spectrum.
Right.
It didn't go as bad as Horse Armor, but a couple of it was pretty close.
But
anyway, base price is $30 or 75% off this week, and which brings it down to $7.49.
Yep, definitely add it to your collection if you don't have it already. So your first pick,
which EA did give it out as an on-house giveaway, but that's only the base edition. So
right, and
if you want the DLC, you either have to go through BioWare and do their bullshit BioWare points, or get it here.
And I will say, like, the base game is fine. You can definitely enjoy the game, but the DLC is so good for Dragon Age.
It adds a lot of possibilities for modding.
Right.
Which this actually has a really thriving modding scene even to today.
So your first game, my secret third game, was Dragon Age. My first game, both of my games were positive this week, by the way. My first game is Armada 2526 Gold Edition. This is a 4X strategy game that is... It gives you a lot of freedom and choice, which you might think sounds silly when it comes to 4X games, but there's actually a lot of 4X games that are really restrictive. But Armada 2526 lets you construct your own ships, like you can design them. It's got actual ground-based combat mechanics. It's not like a full-on RTS or anything like that, but you just have lots of options, lots of things that you can do. There's tons of units. I think there's... let's see, let me look. Steam says there's 18 races here. I mean, I'm sure that's right. There's a whole lot. You get a lot of choices. A lot of the races feel very different. It does suffer a bit from some weird graphical issues.
Yeah, I'm reading the reviews right now, and there's some people complaining about memory leaks.
Yeah, and the Gold Edition has crashing issues. If you play just Armada 2526, it, as far as I know, is a more stable build, which honestly doesn't make any sense to me, but, you know, game development is hard, so I'll give them that one. But you miss out on a lot of the extra content that comes with the Gold Edition. So if you're looking for a 4X game that's not too expensive, I would wholeheartedly recommend Armada 2526 Gold Edition. It's normally $19.99. It's on sale for 80% off, so $3.99.
which brings me to my second pick.
Right.
And this is going to be an interesting one.
Okay.
This is a little puzzle game called Ichi. I-C-H-I. The Japanese word for one.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
It was originally a mobile game that's brought it over to Steam. The idea of it is that you need to bounce a item around the map and hit certain points.
Uh-huh.
And it brings a lot of interesting mechanics into it. I don't want to go too in-depth on it, partly because I haven't played a terrible amount of it, which is probably bad on my part. But it's an interesting one, and it's also dirt cheap.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And I do love myself these odd little puzzle games that are less than $1.
Yeah, I like the art style, actually. It makes me feel like I'm looking at a sheet of, what is it, drafting paper? Like for drawing a house?
Yeah, it has an interesting aesthetic to it. It has a sort of a hand-drawn effect.
It's cute. I like cute things.
I'm pretty sure I picked this up originally in a bundle somewhere as well. But it has a lot of puzzles, and unfortunately the screenshots don't exactly show how well it works. It's one of those games that you have to see in motion, and I'm not sure if the trailer... Well, the trailer shows it a bit better. You have to hit certain points and bounce around.
Oh, and you can like rotate your puzzle pieces.
Yeah, you can rotate the parts as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's splits and portals and those sort of things.
Is this a mobile game?
Yeah, it was originally on mobile.
Okay, I was going to say, it just popped up.
I'm pretty sure it's still on mobile as well.
I was going to say, it just popped up and said tap to rotate or whatever. And I'm
it wasn't a great port, but, I've seen far worse.
True. And it is currently 49 cents on Steam.
It's originally $4.99. Unfortunately, PC has this weird, PC tax on it where mobile games go for several times their actual price on mobile.
Right.
But anyway, it's 90% off, which brings it down to 49 cents. And actually, I'll throw out a third pick real quick. Their new game is also on the weekly sale. I have no experience with it, but it has a lot of free DLC on it.
Castaway Paradise, is that it?
Yeah, it's also on the weekly sale, and you actually have it on your wish list.
It looks a lot like, what is that game that I bought? I might... It's like a zombie farming survival game. Like, you have to create a farm and a town that can survive the zombie apocalypse, and you build this town and you get members. It looks a lot like that.
I think I know what you're talking about. It was originally a web game.
Farm for Your Life is what it's called.
Ah, okay. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, but a general idea.
But it looks like that.
Yeah, this also is another mobile port, so take it for what you will. It's Castaway Paradise. I have no experience with it and haven't really put in depth on it, or even really looked at it until now. But since you had 3 picks, I thought I'd throw out something else.
There you go. Way to think on your toes.
It's $14.99, 67% off, which brings it down to $4.94 with a lot of free DLC on it. So if you like free stuff,
I love free stuff.
It's an interesting looker. I have no experience on it, but it might be worth adding to your wish list for later.
So last on my list is a let's see, hang on, let me read this description here. A fast-paced first-person shooter. Wait, no, that's not the right description. Where's the one that I saw? It was like, here we go. So the description for this game: first-person bullet hell roguelite mayhem. And if you recognize that as the subtitle
Tower of Gun?
Yep, of Tower of Guns, you are correct. So,
what can I say? I know my roguelites.
Tower of Guns is one of the only roguelites that I actually find interesting. The first person, craziness of it is what makes it so intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's a bullet hell game.
Normally, I don't like bullet hell, but the first-person aspect and 3 dimensions gives it just this extra bit of
Dimension?
well, yes, dimension, but I was going to say strategy and challenge to it that just frees up the player. Again, I love games that give you options, and being able to move in 3-dimensional space in a bullet hell game gives you a lot more options than just being stuck on a shmup, you know? Mm-hmm. And I find the idea fascinating. I don't own it, but I have played it. It had a free weekend at some point, and I played it. And I really enjoy it. And eventually it's going to be on sale cheap enough for me to buy it and mess around with it for a few hours. It's currently on sale for 66% off, which is $5.09, or your regional equivalent.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I picked that up on a bundle as well at some point.
But the thing, like, I originally didn't care on it or care about it, but a few months ago I was going back watching some older Total Biscuit videos, and he did a WTF is of this game, and I was like, oh, actually, that looks a lot more interesting than I thought it did.
Yeah, Total Biscuit is very, very tough on the roguelike genre.
Yeah. But
and I can understand why the base combat on roguelites are generally very basic and requires the power-ups to be interesting. But unfortunately, it just... a lot of games just don't hold up to that.
Yeah. I felt like Tower of Guns, though, was very interesting and compelling. It had solid enough combat for me. Solid enough gunplay.
Yeah, it's a game that I think I need to go back to at some point because I don't think I put too much time into it.
Yeah, one day I actually will purchase it and play it a lot more than what I have. Basically demoed it. I mean, I didn't get a demo, but, you know, it was on a free weekend once, so I played it for a couple hours.
Yeah, it looks like I only have a couple hours into it. And it looks like it was actually updated fairly recently by the patch notes. A lot of small bug fixes, but it's something at least. Hey, that's a lot more than what I could say for some game devs.
Very true. So that wraps up our list for the week. Another positive list. I think next week I'm just going to have to come in with like all negative games to balance it out. I don't know.
People don't like us praising games, I guess.
We'll see what...
It's more fun to rip apart a game, to be perfectly frank.
It is, but there were several good games on the sale this week. I mean, I actually had to think about it for a few minutes to decide which games to pick. Like, normally I look at it and I go, oh, that's garbage. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's trying to find the one gem in the in the pile of rubbish.
But, I mean...
Yeah, I'll throw another one out there. Planet Base is on sale.
Yeah.
Not hugely on sale, but... it's on sale. I'd probably wait on that because there were some complaints about the late game on that. Right.
I considered Planet Base. But I mean, you know, Battle Group 2, that's a fun game. Postal 2, that's a really interesting game. But it can be a lot of fun. Fairy Solitaire is actually a fun game.
Yeah, that's another one I considered.
Hard Truck Apocalypse is fun.
Mount Your Friends?
I don't have any experience with Mount Your Friends, so I kind of skipped by that one.
Well, that's almost YouTube bait. Leisure Suit Larry, depending on how you view that type of game.
Yep, I said Armada. I'm going down this list here.
Yeah, it was a good week.
Yeah, they had a lot of good games on sale this week.
Cherry Tree High Comedy Club. It's a sort of a visual novel / RPG.
I should give that a look. I love visual novels and RPGs.
It's not a very serious one. It's basically this girl wants to make a comedy club at her high school, and she needs to get a certain number of people to join.
Ooh, here's Deus Ex Machina 2. Square Lands. What is that? That looks interesting.
And the weekly deal discussions moved on to just rambling.
Oh, wait, never mind. No, that doesn't look interesting.
Dangerous High School Girls in Trouble is an interesting one.
That sounds racy.
It's supposed to be a very, very tough board game almost. I have it through a bundle, but I've never really put enough time into it to figure it out.
Cafe O is a really fun visual novel. It's got actually a really good, deep storyline if you're into that sort of thing, like I am. Oh, Storm Over the Pacific. Although that's got some mixed reviews on Steam, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that reviews on Steam aren't everything.
That's very true. I mean, we've talked about that before several times, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a few more times. But
I mean, in a general sense, you can get a feel for it, but at the same time, there's people that will just rate down a game because there's not enough people rating it down because they think it's funny.
Yep. Toy Soldiers was another game that I seriously considered. But I heard that there were some problems with the complete edition.
I don't have any experience with Toy Soldiers. It's one that was interesting to me. It's an early access game, isn't it? Yes, it is.
Yeah, which is interesting because I've played both Toy Soldiers and Toy Soldiers Cold War on Xbox 360. I mean, they're fully complete, great games. I don't understand why they're early access.
Maybe this is early access for their porting version.
Maybe.
It doesn't look like it's doing very well player-wise.
No, most of the recent reviews, it looks like, are saying that the game is all but abandoned at this point.
Yeah. Which, that may be a topic for some time, talking about abandoned games, and we're going way long.
Right.
on this rambling...
Well, how can it be?
A little adventure that we're having.
Well, they had an update on November the 2nd of 2015. I mean, it's been a while since then, but the game's not been abandoned if they're updating bug fixes and things. I don't know.
Well, I think that's maybe also a part of... well, first of all, we don't know exactly when that review was put in.
Fair enough.
And also, I think people don't understand the timeline of game development, how long it could take. I mean, just look at the update for Kerbal Space Program.
Right.
They're now getting into the quality assurance portion of the update, which is going to take them probably about a month because of it's an engine change. And I don't think people understand just how big that is. They think that, it's just, going into the software editor, hitting backspace from UD 4 point whatever and putting in 5 and done.
Yep. And I mean, we've had our gripes about
Kerbal
Space Program for sure, but I do get that game development is a lot more complex than just changing a 4 point something to 5. But I've got other problems with Squad's decisions that we won't get into at the end of our show.
No, that may be a thing for whenever 1.1 eventually comes out. I'd love to have a certain guest on if he can make it.
As would I. Actually, that would be a blast.
I think that's something we'll need to talk about.
We should talk about that.
But we need to wrap up this episode first.
Oh, look, Smugglers 5 is on sale. Like, that was perfect timing. I was actually going to go ahead and say that, and you're like, oh, we should wrap up. Right, but you're right. We should wrap up. Let's do that.
So what do we have going on for the coming week until we record again?
Well, over at Gaming Psychologist on YouTube, now that I am over my vacation and then over my illness, I've got some regular content going back up this week. I'm going to be starting to put out the rest of my Let's Play series in Space Engineers that I started before Christmas.
Well, it's good that you're timely, at least.
Yes, very timely. I also have some pending content for Eve. I've got a discussion that I'm working on. It's going to be not exactly scripted, but I'm going to have a lot of notes of things that I want to talk about because I feel like I need to do some work related to Eve as much as I play it. And I've got a lot of things that I want to talk about. I got some beef with that game, and then I've got some things that I want to praise it for. So I think it'll just be kind of like in the style of Total Biscuit's videos where he's like, I will now talk about whatever for X amount of minutes. It's going to be one of those. And then that's going to be it for my channel for the next week. Of course, if you want to follow me, you can also find me over on Twitter at JMA4707 and on Twitch over at twitch.tv/jarthur4707. Got the Wednesday night and the Friday night streams.
And on my YouTube at Gaming with Caffeine Rage, or the actual URL is Gaming with Rage. I currently have 3 series chugging away, with Grow Home just starting. By the time you're listening to this, potentially, only the 2nd episode is out. And we talked about that now about 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Besides that, I have a series on Darksiders, which is actually on about the 5th or 6th episode at this point. It's still fairly early. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties with it. It just doesn't want to record properly. It's recording well enough. So I'm not going to drop the series, but it's been annoying me.
Right. I remember you complaining about that a few days ago.
Yeah, it's not wanting to record at 30 FPS. It's doing something between 25 to 27, depending on the area it's in. And it's definitely not my computer because I'm rendering, or the actual game footage is running at 80 or 90 FPS. So it's definitely not the game. It's just some sort of weird interaction between the recording software and the game itself. And I just can't solve it. So I'm actually having to have the game like resampled to go up to 30, which is making it a little bit more jittery than it should be, but it's not terrible. At least in my opinion. But then again, there's not a lot of really quick action in that game, so I think it's acceptable at least. And plus, it's also a passive experience for people watching. So playing it at 27 FPS is a lot different than watching a resampled video from 27 FPS. And we're getting into the FPS debate, aren't we, already?
Yep, that has actually been on the topic list like several weeks in a row at this point, and it just keeps getting pushed off because we know it's going to be a big topic, and we always run out of time. Eventually, though, we'll debate the merits of 30 versus 60 and beyond FPS.
Yeah, and why YouTube videos don't matter as much. I mean, it still helps, but I think that's something that we could probably add in.
Right. I mean, we'll talk about it in its entirety. Since we're mentioning it now, let's just commit to talk about it next week.
Assuming it's not a big news week for some reason.
That's true. Unless it's like a crazy, ridiculous news week, we will commit to discuss 30 FPS versus other FPS.
Other?
Well, I mean, it says 30 versus 60 on our notes, but really, I mean, you can run 144 FPS easily.
Mm-hmm. Or 24.
Or 24, or,
Or 1.
1. KSP players are familiar with running less than 10 FPS.
But, okay, getting back to what's going on my channel. The third series is my long-going series on the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth. It's a 2D, technically twin-stick shooter, roguelite. And it's very episodic, so you don't have to worry about me being on like episode, I think I'm on like 15 now. You could just jump in and every show is self-contained. It's a single run, or if I do poorly, which is sometimes, actually often the case, it's more than one run. But all of them are self-contained, so you don't have to worry about the 100-some episodes of Binding of Isaac to go to Afterbirth. It's something that you could just jump into. And if you wish to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Gaming with CR, and I'm about to transition away from the one with the underscores. So I'm still at gaming_with_CR. But if you need to find me the other way, you can remove the underscores, and there should be a link there to take you to my primary Twitter account.
Right. And as always, we are more than happy to receive your emails, your tweets, your audio content that you'd like to send us at VGLPodcast@gmail.com. And then obviously you can tweet each of us at our own Twitter accounts. You can leave a comment on our YouTube videos.
If you really want to get our attention, did start using the hashtag VGLPodcast as well. I am actively monitoring that. But anything that's tweeted at me, I will see as well.
Please, 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 please. Send us in stuff. I mean, we made, 20 minutes of content out of a 2-paragraph email?
Yeah, well, two-paragraph email praising us.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a 2-paragraph email calling us shit.
Before, flattery will get you everywhere.
Absolutely. Especially with rage, if you know what I'm saying, Huh?
Oh, my.
Oh, my. Anyways, as always, I think it's that time of the week where I say, bye-bye now.
Not quite.
Oh, nope, not quite. What did I miss?
Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and his work can be found at Incoputech.com. You're jumping the gun this week.
I am jumping the gun. Well, I mean, we changed up the way we're doing it, and so I forgot.
Wait, we have to give credit where credit is due.
Credit where credit is due. Fantastic music from Kevin McLeod. And speaking of that fantastic music, here it comes as it gets mixed in with my voice. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. It would help if I had my fingers on home.
Wogat. Yeah, I was watching that.
And it would help if I had proper punctuation as well.
That helps, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, I've worn my keyboard so much that the bumps on the home keys are actually pretty much gone.
Might be time for a new keyboard. Or to replace your keys.
Well, let's just put it this way. I look at my keyboard, and it's, instead of QWERTY, it's, the E is completely worn through. Actually, the W is fine. I've worn through E, A, S, D, and C, and V for some reason. Don't ask me about V. I have no idea why.
Yeah, V's not a super common key for typing. Maybe like in a game you play or something, you use V a lot.
Yeah, and I've completely worn through the period key.
Or you might rest your thumb on V instead of resting on the spacebar.
No, you could actually see where I rest my thumb. Because my thumb actually rests on the spacebar, and there's a little indent.
Nice. I don't think I've ever had a keyboard that long.
I actually have 3 spots on the spacebar that I've worn on my left thumb, and this is probably the outro, isn't it?
It might be.
I've worn a spot on the left side of the spacebar where I rest my thumb, a large part just below B and N, where I usually strike the spacebar if I'm not hitting it with my left thumb, and then on the bottom of the spacebar, where it goes down into the keyboard, there's another large area worn where my right thumb rests against the spacebar during normal typing.
I actually don't rest my thumbs on the keyboard when I type. I've got one of those little smushy gel pads in front of my keyboard, and when I'm typing, I rest my thumbs on those. Or on it.
Oh, I drove my typing teacher nuts because I had an odd configuration of how I'd type. Well, just even my thumb placement, and that I usually end up, even though I have my thumb literally on the spacebar, I usually hit it with my pointer finger.
Right.
And I nearly failed that class, actually, because she was grading based on improvement since our first test. And the thing is, I went into that class able to touch type. So I showed almost no improvement and broke her system. She had no one that was able to touch type going into her class. And it's strange because it was a requirement to be able to use the computers at the school. You had to learn how to type because that allows you to use a computer somehow. Don't ask me why. It was the 90s.
My typing teacher, I had 2. I had one in middle school and I had one in high school. And I learned to type in middle school. And then the teacher that I had in high school that taught it was this really, really old lady who she couldn't type anyways. Maybe on an actual typewriter she could type, but she couldn't type on a computer. And she would yell at us about finger placement all the time. And we're like, we can out-type you. Why are you getting mad at us?
Well, my teacher was Mavis Beacon.
Nice.
Oh, you recognize the name.
Yeah. I had Mavis Beacon, but my parents got it for me after I already knew how to type. They were like, oh, it can help you type better. And I could out-type Mavis Beacon. I can type...
That's literally how I learned to type in, late elementary school, early middle school.
Right.
I can't remember exactly when.
How many words a minute can you type?
Right now, somewhere around 65 or 70. It's not terribly fast.
Like my normal, like if I'm just typing, I type about 60 words a minute. But if I'm like really in a groove, like getting into it or trying really hard, I can type like 120 words a minute.
Yeah, I don't get nearly that fast. The closest I get is probably 85 to 90 if I get really in the groove.
Right.
But I'm constantly going back and editing as I type, which really slows me down as well.
I don't make very many typing errors, at least not like accidental. I'm not the greatest speller, so I could misspell words.
Yeah, that's my primary problem.
I usually just go back after I'm done and fix it. All right.
See, I just see those red lines. It's like, I must fix this now.
I used to be that way, but now I just ignore it. Typing scripts for Kerbalcast really fixed that in me. Because, like, until I added the words to the dictionary, like, every time I typed Kerbal, it would show up red. I'd be like, I should just add this to the dictionary instead of ignoring it.
Well, let's put it this way. I copied the dev notes into OpenOffice, what I usually use. And it just goes red. There's sometimes they have a typo or they screwed up the spelling of a word or two, and then there's all the technical terms that OpenOffice just goes, I don't know what this means.
This is all gibberish. It's not words. This is definitely the longest we've recorded before we've actually started the episode. We're at 8.5 minutes.
Oops, sorry.
No, it's fine. Just
hey, at least you have a lot of stuff. Yeah, you have a lot of stuff to choose from the outtakes.
Yeah. Okay.
We haven't even started yet.
No, we haven't even started yet.
I have the timer that we're going to ignore completely, all set and ready to go.
Absolutely. All right. Game face. Ready?
No. Let's try this tomorrow.
Sorry, no can do. All right.